board decides to direct staff to do that, we'll complete a use and license agreement with Holy Cross and make this happen. But with that, this is an opportunity for the board to become educated a little bit more about EV and charging and ask any questions you have about it, because it is a quickly changing technology and it is difficult to stay abreast of all the changes that are occurring. The other thing, and it's in the questions in the AIS, is this is an opportunity also for the board to consider start charging for charging. Currently we have 4 charging outlets at Public Works, for actually 4 spaces that the public can access, and there now it's free charging. But if we agree with Holy Cross to do this effort, it could be a time to start to charge across the board. And I know the city of Aspen is also considering this as well. So let's have that discussion. You can talk to these professionals about what it would cost on average someone to charge their vehicle, given the rate that we're charging at Buttermilk. But with that, Chris?
Great. Thank you guys for having us. I co-authored our electrification of transportation program over 2 years ago. We implemented it last year with our board approval. And I have some slides, just a little bit of education at first, and then we'll go into what we're trying to do. So this is my first slide that I like to show. It is the time for technology to reach 80% penetration. You can see how it started with telephones and stoves and automobiles, and then moved to radios, refrigerators, and washing machines. And then further along, you can see even how fast that we all became addicted to our computers the way it is. And so now we're have these other technologies that are called.
Still do paper.
Yeah. One of the few. Yeah. We have these things that we call grid edge technologies, and that's a utility term for devices that live at the edge of the grid. So they live at your homes, they live at your businesses. They're not attached to the substation, and they're kind of changing how we look at energy, either production or consumed. So here's a chart just showing that what electric vehicles are going to look like as we approach 2020, 2030, and 2040. And if it follows the same rate that computers have fallen, and TVs and washing machines, over the next 10 years we should see a huge increase in electric vehicles. A couple just overviews here. Some of the things you hear about is range anxiety and battery density. Range anxiety is nothing new. We've all been in our gasoline cars and had our gasoline lights come on and had that moment of worry of how far is the next gas station. It is no different in an electric car. The only problem with an electric car is that the gas stations aren't on every single corner or every couple miles, and that they take longer to charge. That's where battery density comes in. That's how much energy can actually be stored inside a car. Typical Chevy Bolt can store 60 kilowatt hours. That's pretty good. A residential battery that you would put in your house is only 12 kilowatt hours. So these are 4 times the size. It's a lot of energy that's actually underneath your seat when you're driving these things. Plug types, this is something to talk about. Most plug types in the upper left-hand corner, that's a CCS plug. That's a standard American plug, so that's what you'll see on the Chevy Bolts. That's what you'll see on probably the new Fords that come out. The plug on the right is what's known as, that's a a level 3 plug. So that's able to produce up to 60 kilowatts of energy into the car. The red one, of course, is a Tesla plug, and why I'm explaining this is because all plugs are not compatible. It's the same thing as we see if you've ever gone to Europe. You have to buy an adapter to get your phone to charge. It's the same thing with EV charging. Some of the Japanese cars, like the Leaf, use a plug called the Chatamo, so you need an adapter that can allow all cars to do this. For the chargers that we're looking at putting in Buttermilk, Tesla does make an adapter that would allow those cars to charge there. But because of the proximity of the 8 Tesla chargers at the end of Aspen, I don't think we'll see a whole lot of charging going there, unless our rates are a lot cheaper and people are smart about where they charge and what the economics are. Right now there's 3 levels of charging, level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 charging is a typical 120 volt plug. A lot of people, when they first get their car, they drive it home, they plug into a level 1 charger, they get 120 volts out of it, and it takes a long time to charge. It can take up to 12 hours to charge a Chevy Bolt. The next level is the level 2 charger. This runs off 240 volt. It's the same type of plug that you would plug in a dryer to, or your electric range at your house. So pretty standard in houses now. No code requires that garages have a 40 amp level 2 charger. To be a part of that, one of the other programs we do have at Holy Cross, we have one of our programs called Charge at Home, where we give out a free level 2 charger if you bought an electric vehicle. So this is the majority of where we see charging going to happen. DC fast charging or level 3 charging is what we see kind of in our corridors, or someone that's going to come here and visit and really only has like 30 minutes where they want to park. So a lot of this, I think about how long is a car going to park in a parking spot. If you're going to go home and you're going to park for 4 or 5 hours, level 2 is great. Or like we're going to talk about in Buttermilk, if you're going to go to Buttermilk and you're going to go ski for 4 or 5 hours, that's great. We don't need to have a car come and park at a level 3 charger for 4 hours when they only need 40 minutes of charge. It's a waste of the asset.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say up to 2 miles, 30 minutes, that means if I charge for 30 minutes, I'm only getting 2 miles of travel time on my electric vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
That doesn't sound very significant to me.
It's not. We don't see a whole lot of level 1 charging.
But even 10 miles for 30 minutes, that won't even get you up to Independence Pass.
Yeah, that's why we talk about 4 hours of parking
Yeah.
there.
So somebody, though, who's driving through on their way to Leadville from here and want to charge, they better be prepared to buy lunch.
No, what they're saying is, that's only if you charge for 30 minutes, but if you charge for 4 or 5 hours.
That's what I'm saying, is they're going to have to stay for 4 or 5 hours if they want to get a fuller charge than 10 miles.
That's
Yeah.
why, like at the Pickens County
what I'm
building,
saying.
and we're starting to see more of this, it's a level 3 charger next to a level 2 charger, or next to a multiple sets of level 2 chargers.
So a fast charger next to the.
Yes,
level
fast
2.
charger. So you'll have cars that'll come in and park that might go to work, or they
Right.
might go skiing, or commute via bus into their job. And then we have the level 3 chargers for people that are not going to be
Right, and then
there.
that raises the question of somebody parking there for 8 hours when they're fully charged at 4 or 5, and somebody else wanting to use the charger.
Yeah, so there's definitely.
That's a
No.
further discussion, I think, if you want.
Yeah, we can talk about it right now. So the chargers that we were suggesting putting out there, which are the charge point known as the CT4000, it's just a commercial grade level 2 charger, has a lot of functionality into it. They have something even called waitlist. So if I pull up to a charger and charge, and Mike comes up to the chargers and all 8 plugs are plugged in right now, he can push on his app that he wants to join the 8 waitlist. And all those 8 chargers are going to be grouped together. And the first time the car pulls out, Mike gets 20 minutes to move his car into that spot.
Which is difficult if he's taking the bus into town,
I agree.
and he has to tell his boss, I gotta go spend an hour going to replug my, those are
Right.
logistics we have to talk about.
In
in the
addition,
operating of
in some of the functionality of the app is, it tells you when your car's charged.
Right.
How far along it is being charged.
Because you can't go unplug that guy and plug yours in. I bet
No.
people do that, though, but,
The plug locks into the car
oh, so it does, so
because
you
of
can't.
that. Yeah, it's because you don't want anybody
Yeah,
being a theft of that. These are all very good questions, and they're all issues that we are trying to work out. And I think the more plugs that we can get out into the areas, the less these will become an issue.
right, because we'll have, and one of the things too, looking at the data in here is that, was it called, this area, 10% of all EV sales in the state,
Correct.
so that's significant, so. Yeah, I mean, we want that, but, be careful what you ask for, kind of a thing.
The problems that Patty brings up are ubiquitous. This isn't just, it's not just us.
I know, but
This is
right now, I don't care about everywhere else, I'm caring about what we're doing
Yeah,
here.
But the problems have also been addressed everywhere else too, so we can look and see what's happening elsewhere, what
I think
the
there are
industry
probably still
standards are.
problems everywhere else, and.
Oh, yeah, there are. Any new technology. Okay,
We'll keep on going. So in 2018, after getting board approval for our electrification of transportation plan, we put out an RFP. We had 13 different what are known as EVSC, electric vehicle supply equipment manufacturers. I'm just going to call them chargers from here on out. And through that competitive process, we selected ChargePoint as our preferred supplier. We were able to negotiate some good terms with them to be able to procure chargers at a cheaper rate. We have now put in over 100 home chargers in people's homes. We've installed 12 of these CT4000s, which is what you're seeing in the picture right there, and we have put in 2 DC fast chargers. One in Eagle County that you're seeing there, and the other one in the town of Basalt. We did that all in this year.
One in Basalt's behind City Hall.
Correct.
Yeah. So the CT4000, just some technical stuff, is able to deliver 7.6 kilowatts out of both plugs. So it doesn't matter if one car's pulled up or 2 cars pulled up, they're both going to get the 40 amps and the 7 kilowatts. We've already talked about the increase. We talked about this earlier today. It's very rare now that you pull up to a stoplight, especially in the city of Aspen or the Roaring Fork Valley, and you don't see an EV car in my mirror. I pay a lot of attention to this because I seem to love EVs a lot and notice that stuff, and it's part of my job. We've also been working with a lot of what we call our community partners, and that's Picking County, City of Aspen are definitely some of our community partners. But Eagle County has definitely put together a fairly nice plan, and they're looking at deploying over 40 level 2 chargers, plus up to 4 DC fast chargers. We did put in what's known as a Charge Ahead Colorado grant, so this is where the Volkswagen funding has gone to
Right.
help pay for some of this for a DC fast charger in Carbondale. But we did not apply for one in Picking County. You know, one of the other things that I've done is it started trickling in where someone would just call in and ask, what does this location look like? What's the power here? Because a lot of people want to put in DC fast chargers, but DC fast chargers take 3-phase. And 3-phase is not available everywhere, as we know. One thing interesting about Picking or Buttermilk parking lot is, you know, you guys know it's broken into 3 owners across that lot.
Right.
On one side, where we're proposing to put these level 2 chargers that take single phase, that's what's available over there. There's not 3-phase and single phase available. But then on the other side of the lot, which is the ski cone owned lot, there's enough 3-phase to power 3 or 4 large commercial buildings or buses as Ski Code looks to change the fleet from Buttermilk to Highlands. This is a snapshot of 4 o'clock last night. These are the level 2 chargers in the Picking County area. You can see that, you know, at 4 o'clock, there's fairly good use, almost a half.
Describe what this means, the green line, or is that?
Green line means someone is plugged in and charging, white line means available.
And then the number is how many?
Is how many plugs. So as we look, and this is only level 2, so right below Woody Creek is the Picking County building. They have 2 level 2 chargers there. Both of them were open at 4 o'clock. As you move south, you're moving into the ABC. So, you know, Ski-Co.
Oh, so the 2 at Woody Creek are Public Works, Brad?
Correct, yeah. And then as you move into Aspen, you know, there's 6 here, there's some in the Rio Grande parking lot, but there is a little bit of a gap between the 8 and the 6 as you travel down 82, which is where the Buttermilk parking lot will be.
Where are the, is it 10 in the Basalt area?
There are 10 in the Basalt area.
Oh.
Ski-Co has some out front. Town Hall has 2. Can't think what the other ones are, but there are 10 there.
We already have the 8 superchargers in Aspen are specifically Tesla.
Specifically Tesla, yeah.
And Chris, if you can go back one slide, I want to make sure the board reads the last bullet you have there.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this is building a partnership between Holy Cross and Picking County. When we sat down and wrote the electrification of transportation plan, a lot of our thoughts were based around what could happen at the Brush Creek Park and Ride. Because there's so much land there, there's such an opportunity to make that a hub for people to park and to go into their communities like it's designed to do, but I think a lot of people just drive right by it and come up here and try to find a parking spot. And as we all know, traffic coming in here is awful. So if we can entice people to park in these lots that are meant for high volume parking and commute in via electric buses, I mean, we're doing our job.
So,
Other areas are Redstone. There's a big gap between Carbondale and Paonia. So we've been working with the Redstone Hotel there, to put a charger there. We've also been working with Pickens County Open Spaces, because they secured some land right behind the beehive ovens there to possibly do that.
Coke ovens.
Coke ovens, yeah.
That look like beehives.
They look like beehives.
Now, which is the Woody Creek, well, George had a question, but I wanted to make sure you mentioned the location of the Woody Creek on there. Where would that one be?
Again, like what we've done, we've had a lot of requests, and we have over 70 DC fast charger locations already predefined. So if somebody wants to put a charger there, we're ready to go. Woody Creek, there's a lot of kind of mobile home park housing right there that, a lot of this is enticing people to have another option besides being able to charge at home. Maybe they're in a multifamily dwelling, maybe they're on-street parking, maybe they don't have 40 amps worth of electrical load in their panel to give away. So Woody Creek, we'd probably put it down by the tavern.
And a lot of people don't know the parking area for the tavern is owned by the county. So where all those across the street, that's all county land.
Is there an electric opportunity there?
There is.
along that
There's a
berm?
three-phase line that runs
Right above it.
parallel to the bike path.
Put it right next to the horse hitching post.
Put it on the horse hitching
George?
post.
So my question is, looking at this, because I had a concern in terms of why we're using Buttermilk parking lot. Is it because the Bush Creek is not set up to be able to provide power for those chargers at this point?
I think Buttermilk was just another spot, another location that we could use and is ready to go. And I believe that Holy Cross has some going in with the ski company as well. And so this was just a first place that we could place it. It's high visibility, it's right on 82, there's electricity there.
So, but the Brush Creek intercept lot does not have the ability to place chargers there at this point?
There's 2 chargers already at the Brush Creek parking lot.
There are.
And then
So-
I think one of the reasons for
Is when we do the redevelopment.
Yeah, exactly. So when we do the redevelopment, we've already been talking about what it would take to readiness. So a lot of this is not only putting in 8 plugs or 4 chargers or whatever it is, it's preparing for what it looks like in 2025. It's future-proofing this, and that's a lot of what we've been working on with the Brush Creek Park and Ride is how do you future-proof this? How do you make this, and what I would say, by 2024, we need to be close to 20% ready.
So
That doesn't mean 20% of the lots actually have plugs. It's just that 20% of the lots in the future are pre-wired to have plugs.
So I'm still a little confused here.
Yeah.
The intercept lot right now, Brush Creek has 2 chargers there.
Correct.
Does it have the ability to have more chargers at this point? Mitch is saying no.
We will be putting the infrastructure in as we redevelop it with this FLAP grant.
Oh, so
So
that-
through the engineering design, we have designated the spots where electric charging will occur. The infrastructure is not there right
It's
now.
not there now. So that won't be till 2022?
That's correct.
Yeah. And how about down at the Basalt BRT lot?
We could put one there, yeah.
I mean, my point or my question is, one of the goals as stated is that we want to encourage people to utilize park and rides. And certainly, the sooner we can capture them, the better off. So by utilizing current park and rides down valley, whether it be Basalt or the intercept lot, is a lot better than trying to get into the traffic jam at the airport trying to get to the Buttermilk lot.
Understood.
I agree. This is our first one of many, hopefully.
Right, but you understand what I'm saying?
I-
Because people are still gonna they're just gonna be tied up in the traffic, they're just adding to the congestion at the airport, trying to get to Buttermilk lot. Whereas if they were able to utilize charging stations at an earlier park and ride, would be beneficial for everybody.
I completely agree. I would only say that we need them at both.
And we'll
All.
get there. We'll get there.
So would you consider doing 2 at Buttermilk and perhaps 2 down at the BRT in Basalt? Or splitting this up?
It's more economic just to do 4 in a row as opposed to 2 and 2, and that's what we budgeted for.
Okay.
We're more than happy, again, to look at any spots, from Woody Creek to the park and rides. Like I said, we're working on with RAFTA to get into the Carbondale Park and Ride, which I know is outside of Pickens County, but we have a plan with RAFTA to try to get more people on buses and more cars.
Yeah, I mean, I would prioritize park and rides right to begin with, because that's really where we're capturing the people ideally, right? So that would be a priority of mine. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I don't, and I agree, but Buttermilk to me is a park and ride. It might not be classified as a park and ride, but there is a bus stop right there that I have gotten on many times, and it's a great location for skiers too to come in. We got into a conversation with the other ski resort on the other side of the hill, and had a question. We asked about EV charging, and they said, well, we don't see any EV cars coming to that Vale. And I said, well, do you think that you're not seeing EV cars because you don't have chargers?
Yeah, no,
Because people, when you have an EV car, your mindset changes. You have to figure out where am I going to go, where am I going to charge if I'm not charging at home.
I look at them and I don't have an EV just because I think it's cool to see them.
Yeah. And so with this app too, if you're planning these trips, you know, the location, Chris just pulls these up, you can see locations of these chargers.
yeah. I don't want to belabor the point, but Buttermilk would not be my first choice for all the reasons I've stated.
I agree, and that's why we're trying to fill in the map here.
Well, I have a question though. I actually support Buttermilk as a place because I think sometimes Buttermilk is underused. Hopefully we're finding a way to utilize it more to keep people from driving that last leg into town. But are we concerned about, since we have concerns at Park and Rides about the lack of parking places? The Carbondale gets full very quickly. One in Elgibel gets full very quickly. So have we discussed it? Is it another unintended consequence that people will drive their cars there just to use the chargers, not necessarily be getting on a bus to commute?
I agree.
That's a tough one to.
Yeah. If you know anybody that owns an EV, you know that most of the time they have a book in their car. Because a lot of people go to chargers and they will sit there and read or listen, audiobooks or whatever it is.
And I think that this adds to the capacity challenges we have for park and rides. It's going to add to the problem.
Yeah.
So it's a reality.
It's a tough one. How do you do the right thing and not get a wrong thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue on unless there's more questions.
I think the gist of
All right,
that was,
who's
the
kid?
more chargers we have, the less that will be a problem.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're almost done here, and I'm more than happy to answer any and all questions after this. So we're recommending, to use the Buttermilk lot. We're recommending to use the CT4000. One of the things that was beneficial for us to actually award ChargePoint the RFP was that 3 months later, the Colorado Energy Office also announced that ChargePoint had won their DC fast charging network to put in, I think, close to 40 DC fast chargers. Part of that, for one awkward reason, our whole service territory, except for Vail, was left out. We actually had a program that we called corridor charging, was the original name of it, where we were going to utilize these funds to help develop level 3 DC fast charging on I-70 and on 82, but we weren't awarded any of the corridors. So we changed our program to community charging, and that's where we help with some of the upfront costs of putting in level 3 chargers.
Was the corridor charging, was that part of the plan to go from here to Utah or Nevada or California?
Yep.
That was part of
Every 40 miles.
Hickenlooper's big move to.
Yep. Yeah, so, Holy Cross in this scenario would own and operate and pay the meter on the chargers. So we would do all the billing. We would pay the meter. What we're looking for from Pickens County is the land use and also to do what they do, which is maintain the lot. Holy Cross, we do not own any snow plows. We own line trucks, which does electrical use. So it's a good partnership here, and a partnership that I would love to expand on. One of the other things is, we just came from this bus ribbon cutting, which is phenomenal because a bus is going to charge at night, and part of our 70-70-30 plan, which you guys have heard about, is that we're going to secure a lot of wind, and the wind in Colorado blows heaviest at night. So that's going to be great for the buses. One thing that we're lacking is daytime charging. So the other thing we have is those 100 chargers out at home. Those people all charge at night, so they're going to charge at wind. Me as an engineer, I need to find resources to soak up PV. And transportation and daytime charging is one of the best resources I can think of for soaking up PV. This is the corner of the Buttermilk lot. This is what we're suggesting is on the north side is those 8 lots. One of the reasons that I chose these 8 lots was because on the right side of the picture, you see a sidewalk. So we would either have to put these chargers behind the sidewalk and have the cords drape across the sidewalk, which is a trip hazard, or we could put them in the sidewalk and have people walk around. The approach to the left side here, we're not really buying any asphalt or concrete. The cheapest way to put in an EV charger is put as close as you can to the transformer and don't buy curb and gutter. So that's why these 8 parking spots were chosen. And that's all I have, so I'm open up for any
Okay.
questions.
Cost, we were gonna talk cost, did we?
Sure. Yeah, that's one of them. Sure, go ahead, George.
Yeah, are we gonna talk how much we're gonna charge and how we're gonna charge it and?
Great, so last year we passed in July a new rate schedule. We modified our time of use rate. So it was 6 cents off peak and 24 cents on peak being from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. We've tested this at the Eagle County DC charger for the last 6 months to see how well it's working. And based on their charging, and it's all about utilization, when are people using, but I think more people are probably gonna charge off peak here, because again, we're looking for cars to come and park for hours, as opposed to a DC fast charger, you're looking for 30, 40 minutes. The DC fast charger is chaotic when you look at the loading. It's car pulls in, you just don't know when the next car is coming. These become predictable. People seem to find their charger out in public, and they go to that charger, and they go to the charger the next day, and the next day, and that's their spot where they park their car when they're not at home. So we'll need a little bit of tweaking, but based on that time of use rate, we look like we can charge 8 cents a kilowatt hour for pricing that the person would pay to charge the car. And that would give us a little bit of margin on the meter, but not a whole lot. We're not looking to make money, we're looking to break even and provide services.
And Chris, what could that average for someone that puts 10,000 miles on their car a year?
You're gonna be at $28 a month.
So if I park, it's just a couple bucks if I park at Buttermilk and I'm charging for 5 hours while I'm at work. But I'm parked there for 8 hours, but I'm only getting charged for charging for 5 because that's the only time I'm actually using it.
Yeah, the nice thing about these chargers, and I call them commercial level 2 chargers, is there's almost an infinite amount of ways you can set it up. You can either set it up to charge by the one-time fee. So you pull up here, I charge you $10. I can charge you by the hour. I can charge you $1 an hour. I can charge you by the kilowatt hour, which is what we're used to as a utility. That's what all of our meters run on. The other thing you can do is you can set it up for after 8 hours, I'm going to charge you $1 or $5 to park here. So
It's parking's free at Buttermilk, right, for commuters?
For commuters?
So this would just be a economic incentive mechanism to get them to move their car.
And that's via the app. is
Right,
the
right. But if they
message
move their
saying-
car to the city of Aspen, it's gonna cost them a heck of a lot more per hour to park.
Exactly.
So they're gonna stay out there. Now, I think that, and you have a billing, they have a account that they,
Correct, so we will not process any of the billing, that's all done through ChargePoint because they secured the
What they
network.
do.
So when you download the app, they ask you to put $10 in.
just to
Um,
open the account.
Just open the account, you can actually bypass that if you want, you don't have to, but most people put 10 or 20 bucks in. And when you get down to $5, they send you a message and ask you if you want to put more money in your piggy bank. You put it in,
And preload your card, kind of.
preload your phone, your card. And then, so what happens there is that ChargePoint at the end of the month reconciles across these 8 chargers. They take their 3% cut, just like a credit card company, and they will send Holy Cross a check. And then we'll take that check and pay the utility bill with it. And like I said, we're not looking to turn a profit here. We're looking to provide a service and not what we call rate basis, right? So we're not trying to spread this across our whole membership. We're trying to tell the people that are going to use the power and take the power that they're going to pay for it. Same way we do with the meters.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate Holy Cross is pursuing this program in terms of providing charging stations. Obviously, you don't have the land, so you need to look at other entities for the land. So I think that's great. My question is, sort of back on my earlier remarks, do you have a sort of a number of stations you can do in a year, or do you have a limit? Or
We've budgeted $150,000 for next year, and these are going to cost around $60,000. But we'd like to spread it across our territory.
So this is about 70% of,
It's less than that.
Yeah.
30, 40%.
so it's these 4 stations cost around 60,000.
Yep,
But you'll recoup those dollars. What's your payback on those?
25 years.
Oh, 25 years, okay.
Yeah, we're not doing this to.
Yeah, no, I understand that, that's great. But
It's
right
not
now,
good, you know?
but right
ROI
now,
of
But you
25
changed it
years.
25
well, right now
years.
you've committed for 2020, $150,000
They're in budget talks as we speak.
throughout your entire Holy Cross service area.
150,000 across the whole service territory.
And so, in these level 2 commercial chargers, folks come up, we warehouse these. We have those in our warehouse in Glenwood, and we sell them to members at the wholesale cost. If they want to apply for a grant funding, in this case, we are supplying the chargers.
Oh, okay, so for example, Raft, if they wanted to, they could purchase some charging stations at a wholesale cost and put them on their lots.
Correct, through us.
That's been our normal program
Yeah.
from here on out. This is the first time that Holy Cross has looked at owning and operating a
Oh,
level 2
okay,
charger.
all right, great.
And so when other entities come to us, they request this and they purchase these chargers for cost, and we can help them or assist them with the install and a provider to get them
Yeah,
installed.
so has the county, Brian, utilized this at Public Works or at the airport?
Not yet.
Not yet,
Not
but
yet.
looking at it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, all right, great, thanks.
I'd love to ask a couple of questions. One is I think we should be incentivizing EV, electrification of vehicles and transportation as much as we can. So if we offer free charging, is that going to be, if we start charging for it, is that going to inhibit people? Is there a disincentive, even though I know, unless we can tell people what a great value they're getting, if it's the equivalent of 120 miles per gallon, for instance, or however, so people can understand that it's still a really great thing. It makes sense to get them on the app and the charge point, because then we can track. There's a lot of data there. It'd be very valuable. It'd be a way to keep track of vehicles that are or are not using the charging stations. I think it makes a lot of sense. But I want to make sure we're not getting rid of an incentive for something we're trying to grow as quickly as possible. So that's one question. And then, the other one is just on location of the chargers. We talked earlier about, in California where there's an awful lot of electric vehicles coming online, we're seeing chargers that are blocked by, belligerents, and we're seeing broken chargers that are vandalized, or, it's like, clearly you guys know what you're up for maintenance and supervision of these things. But then also, what if somebody in a big vehicle or an ICE car comes in and just parks and blocks it for one reason or another, maybe out of ignorance? How do we deal
Tow
with that? How do we have to enforce it somehow, right? So who's
yeah.
going to be enforcing it if they're a bunch of big monster
Sitting
trucks
right there
parked
in the back of the
Is that
road.
Mitch who's going to do that for us?
Yeah, so now there's this Colorado state law that allows people to be fined up to $200 for what's known
Blocking
as
a charge.
icing a spot, so internal combustion engine parked in an electrical vehicle spot. One of the things that we did not talk about is signage. I think signage is very important. It's one of the things that we're actually lacking, and people are having a hard time finding the Eagle County DC fast charger because it's hard to put a sign on I-70. So I think signage here, but I think visibility is really going to help out with that. But yeah, it's going to take some code enforcement, just like with anything else. Just like someone parked in a handicap spot. I mean,
Same sort of
somehow
thing.
we've all became believers that we're not going to park in a handicap spot, but somehow we all have to grow this culture and become educated on how to be a good EV charger. I mean, how to
Right, same thing.
what's the culture here? So it's the same thing in my opinion.
How do you feel about those 8 spots kind of pushed up in a corner there? Is there vulnerability, or are they gonna, if everybody plays the game properly, it ought to work fine, but I was thinking, boy, wouldn't you want to put these on an island so you'd have much more easier access? So if somebody's blocking one, you can still get to the charger.
You could, yeah, and honestly, I'm trying to take my 150,000 and spread it far.
Right.
So what I'm looking at doing is not buying asphalt, because anybody that's done construction, the second you're buying asphalt and digging trenches through this parking lot, it
Yeah,
becomes a
terrible
totally
parking.
different story.
Okay, got it.
And I'd just like to reiterate, the 150,000 we asked for is just for level 2 commercial charging. We do have the equivalent money for DC fast charging that we're supporting, and then we have about 90 grand for home charging.
And that's your annual budget.
That's our 2020 budget. I expect that to grow as we see more vehicles.
Right.
So on the charging, the fee, the amount, how much then in comparison would it cost me to charge my EV at my own home through the night?
It depends on what rate you're on. If you're on a standard rate, this would actually be 2 cents a kilowatt hour cheaper, which
I'm
is
trying to say,
not a
what
whole lot.
would incentivize me to leave my car there, take the bus into town rather than driving to Aspen Park for free?
From firsthand experience, we have 4 plugs at Holy Cross. Out of the 3 people that have taken the personal commitment to buy their EV themselves as not a company car, none of them have a at-home charger.
Wow.
It's because it's free, right?
Okay.
So we're giving away electricity, transportation to our employees at Holy Cross.
Well,
And
ours at
therefore,
the
they're not
county,
charging at home.
right, our public works are free.
Yes.
And the other question then is, if we are allowing county vehicles to park there and charge, why would we do that?
To allow,
Because part of the thing in the memo was in county vehicles could park there and charge for free.
correct.
Do we want
So
to?
that was my request, just that, because it's county land, we're a partner in that, we could easily.
If need be, because chances are it's easier just to park them at Public Works and charge them there.
Correct. I don't see them being parked at Buttermilk.
But I think we should leave that, with that explanation, leave that in there just in case we had a need one day. Our chargers were down getting repaired or something and I agree.
Now, are you asking to charge for free?
Charge for free for
For county vehicles.
county vehicles.
So, I mean, to do
This one
that-
said a lower rate. What did it say in the?
I don't know if I could do free. I mean, free means that when a county vehicle charges, that somebody over in Vale that lives over there that pays their utility meter is paying for somebody in Picken County to drive an AV.
Yeah.
And that, it's not fair.
Well, but the other thing is we're letting you use our land, which is also publicly purchased and owned land. So that's where Brian's trying to do the connection was,
Well-
what are we getting as far as for the use of our public land?
Well, the memo, unless you guys haven't really cleaned this up on the contract, the memo says Pickett County fleet vehicles would be able to charge for free.
Yes, it does say that, and that would be cleaned up. Obviously, we're not on the same page there, but we need to clean that up through the use and license agreement.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure
Yeah.
we're on the same page.
We have to also be responsible for our public lands and the
I
taxpayer.
completely agree, just like you're protecting your land, I need to protect my
Yeah.
56,000 members.
Right.
We know the guy that runs you guys over there, and he's a really good guy. We can probably.
Oh,
What about signage? I'd love it if the charger stations were obvious to everyone and we're incentivizing people to get an EV. So a little bit of, your cost to drive with this is much low, a quarter the cost of a gasoline engine or whatever. I think it'd be great not only to identify the chargers, but to have some information there. So anybody who has an interest understands that, hey, this is a good thing.
Are you talking about like possible gallons per gas conversion?
Well,
maybe?
I'd love to see that. I think
Right.
a lot
No
of people have those
billboards, right,
questions.
Greg?
No billboards, but
We can actually-
on the machine itself.
The machines have full video capability. You can actually pre-program a 30-minute video or 30-second video with audio, or you can just scroll stuff across that. So we can scroll what's known as an e-gallon, what's equivalent to the gas.
I think that'd be
Something like
interesting.
that would be
gallon.
great.
We can just scroll that across there as needed.
That's when Greg buys
You
his
put a slot
EV.
machine in, like number 9's a slot machine. That would be cool. You can draw a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, this is so cheap that it could be coin operated, honestly. It's just a lot easier to do it through an app.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I'm excited. I want to see this happen. So.
How would it come back to us, Brian?
If I've got direction here and we clear up, we make sure we're on the same page, staff can sign the use and license agreement per the county attorney.
Unless there's issues, it would need to come back to us.
That's correct.
And I think that we still want to be incentivizing people. So we don't want people to come away thinking that we're charging so much for this that it's a wash. It's like, no, this is still a really great deal. It might not be free, but it's close to free
If you pulled up there empty in a Chevy Volt, you're gonna pay $2.40
to fill up.
to fill all the way.
Rather than $4.36 in
Did you
California.
catch that,
for a
Jason?
gallon.
Or even right here, yeah.
So it's going to cost 20th the cost of filling your tank of gas here. 5%.
And we plan to watch this, and adjust the rates so that we're not losing money on the energy sales. We're willing to have the long ROI on this, but we just can't lose.
Right. Well, you want to build more of them. Got it. I understand. Thanks. Great.
Great,
Looking forward.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thumbs up from this side. Good luck with it.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, if we could indulge in about a 5-minute break, we got some technical challenges.
Oh,
If we could take a
challenge.
quick
All
break.
right, we're gonna take a
We're
5-minute break.
already
We're
running
we're
15
10
minutes
minutes behind
I know,
schedule, so
I know.
we'll pick it up from here. Thanks, Brian. She's got to spool us up here.
That took a little bit.
Okay, we are on. All right, back at our work session. This is the construction and demolition diversion ordinance language. Kathy, Liz, and Brian, welcome.
Hi, Kathy Hall, Solid Waste Manager.
Liz Morrow, Environmental Compliance.
I'm Brian Pettit, I'm the Public Works Director. This has come before the board, I want to say 4 to 5 times now, but this is the final work session, hopefully, that you'll be able to see the actual ordinance language that will come before you in 2 regular meetings. There'll need to be 2 readings to pass the ordinance, but we have the actual language we hope to pass. And with that, we're going to go through the presentation quickly again, but if you have any questions about the ordinance language specifically, this would be a great time to ask that question.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so why do we need it? We brought this up before, but I'm going to continue bringing it up. 58% of the waste buried in the Pitkin County landfill is construction and demolition debris. The national average is 20%, so we tear down a lot of things and put it in the landfill. 35% of that C&D material could have been diverted through our existing diversion programs. And this was based on a 2016 C&D visual waste sort that we did. The bulk of it, which we're struggling with right now, is 56% is engineered wood and drywall. Right now, there are no diversion markets. We're looking at engineered wood that hasn't been treated or painted. We're probably getting a new grinder on site in January once the new budget. That is currently set up to grind it into a mulch product with magnets and colorizer bars to color it and make it a mulch. So that is kind of hopefully the next step in diversion at the landfill. And this is just a breakdown of what you see. This is the C&D characterization. Again, you see treated engineered wood and drywall. We also see a lot of metal, organics, cardboard. All of this is divertible at the landfill today as we speak. So this is what we're really going to target, and with hopefully next year sometime getting engineered wood out of it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go through real quick the specifics of what this ordinance would actually do. And there's two main parts of this. The main part of the ordinance is that anyone doing construction under a construction permit in Pitkin County, in unincorporated Pitkin County, would be required to pay a deposit. That deposit will be $200 per estimated ton of waste generated, and they will pay that to the landfill, and then there will be a diversion requirement. And if they don't meet that requirement, then they won't get their deposit back. So that's how we're incentivizing diversion in unincorporated Pitkin County. So there's going to be a lot of tracking and reporting required with this, and the person who owns the property is required to be responsible for that tracking, and they of course can delegate that to their contractor if they choose to.
I don't understand that.
Go ahead.
The person who owns the property is responsible for the tracking? How's that going to happen?
So yeah, under the general number 1 permit, so the owner of that project, and probably a lot of these big houses are done through some LLC or corporation, so they pull the permit. They are the ones responsible for that 25% diversion. So, and we get into a little bit an online software tracking system, which will do automatic reporting.
Yeah, we'll get
be
into
able to do
the.
that. But one clarification, the general number 1 permit, so you're demoing a house, you pull a permit with ComDev. So it's that general overall permit. We had some roofers in here on our public meetings. They came in and said, we don't have 25%, we can't get to 25% diversion. The roofers are exempt. However, if they do divert material from their roofing project, they will be able then to add it to that general number 1 permit. So if they diverted a couple tons of material, that goes under the general permit.
So I think the confusion came when you said property owner.
Yeah.
It's the permit holder.
Permit holder.
So
Yeah.
whoever's responsible for the permit.
Correct.
And every time you come to the landfill, you get a receipt for what you have. And so
So
they're responsible for tracking.
So how much time on the staffing part will this take? Because a week ago or so, you came in and talked about a new program in terms of Pitkin County's ability to have a $100 credit, and you said even that was too complicated for staff, and this looks a heck of a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, so we'll get into some of the software options in a minute here, and we are proposing, I don't know if you remember from our budget presentation, but we did propose sometime next year trying to add a full-time employee who would be paid for by these deposits. We do anticipate that once this really gets going, it will take 1 full-time employee to manage this program. So the other main part of the ordinance, before we move on to more details, is the tiered pricing structure, which is associated with this overall C&D strategy, but is not actually
only in the ordinance. It's also just a regular pricing change that we went over in our budget presentation. So that's how we're trying to reach this strategy out to people outside of unincorporated Pitkin County, because that will apply to everybody. So as far as what the people with construction permits are required to do, this is the list of materials that they would be required to divert right off the bat. And the way the ordinance is written, we have it so that landfill staff can easily add or remove things to this list if our operations happen to change, or like Kathy said, if we are able to set up a situation where we can divert other stuff. So this is the tiered pricing, which we talked about in our budget presentation. And the way we have it set up right now, this will be going into effect as a price change on January 1st, but we're planning a 2-month soft rollout for educational purposes.
So how does it work for the municipalities? Because you're talking about unincorporated Pitkin County, but so how are we integrating with Snowmass and even Basalt and Aspen in terms of ensuring that they're reducing their C&D that's going into our landfill?
And that's what the tiered pricing gets at, because we can only control unincorporated Pitkin County. So this, again, like Liz said, it covers everybody bringing construction demo loads to the landfill. And we can pretty easily tell what's a permitted, you know, if they're tearing down a house or building. So this captures everybody. And everybody's been made aware of it. We've had public outreach meetings that included everybody, even outside of Pitkin County. We've talked to Carbondale, we've talked to Aspen. So yeah, that's what this tiered pricing is going to capture, because we can't capture everybody with the ordinance. Aspen has said they want to see us work this for a year, and then they're going to see if they'll buy into it. It would really be great if everybody kind of matched their ordinance. So that's what the tiered pricing will get. It captures everybody. It doesn't matter where you're coming from.
So someone who's pulling a permit in Aspen, they're still going to have to meet that higher tier level.
Well, if they don't sort.
If they don't sort.
So if they don't remove their divertible materials from their trash, they will pay that highest level,
And we will continue to track people from coming from Aspen. Majority of the C&D jobs, construction demo jobs, come from Aspen.
Right.
So at the window, starting in January, we're going to ask for a job name or a permit number. And that, in our scale system, when you come up to the scale and you get weighed, we have a line where we can put that in. And then we'll track that. So once they get to 29 tons, we alert them and saying, hey, your house on Mill Street or whatever is at 29 tons. You're getting ready to go up to tier 2. Now that is if they're diverting, they're doing really good and getting out the metal and the concrete and everything. But if they come in from Mill Street, it doesn't matter if they have a permit. If they haven't sorted, you're automatically at tier 4.
But you said earlier, Kathy, that Aspen's going to look at this for a year and then decide. What are they deciding?
They want to see how our actual ordinance works.
So they're going to be deciding on whether to implement a deposit system, like our deposit system.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is happening to everyone no matter what, because they don't have a choice. The deposit system, other towns could choose to copy our ordinance.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, which would be great.
What happens if, and I don't know if this could even happen, I have a project on Mill Street, 2 projects on Mill Street, and I take my truck and take stuff from both projects. How do you split it? Well,
So-
part of my truck came from Project A and part of my truck came from Project B.
It will be requiring a little bit of honesty. People will try to game the system. We're well aware of that. Eventually, if we do bring in a full-time person, there will be inspections, so they can go out and actually check the jobs. It just comes down to it. Really, I think if they're sorting and they get the load sorted out really well, I'm probably going to be pretty okay with it.
We'll have to watch that when
Yeah, I mean, we
see if
got
that's
a lot
a
of
frequent occurrence by the same project manager group that who's ever got 4 projects going and he's kind of shuffling the load.
Yeah,
And
there will
that,
be.
that could happen.
If he's
There will be
closely
some
watching, it
waiting
could.
to-
You never know.
We had some public outreach meetings, and we did the online Pick and Connect portal, and really it was amazing, particularly in the meeting where all the contractors are in. We got a lot of support. There were a number of contractors that said, I am tired of tearing down things and just throwing it away. So I think a lot of the good contractors are out there are on board and supporting this.
Mhm.
So hopefully they'll do
Are
the
you,
right thing.
are you concerned about, does this incentivize people to do multiple loads? Like, are they gonna go for maximum efficiency? I'm trying to think, you tear something down and you're supposed to separate, you can't just dump it all on the back of the truck. You have to kindly pack it in a certain way. And I'm wondering if this is gonna create more truck trips.
It could possibly, like if you have a big job and they've got a lot of metal, they will require a separate trip for metal. In
I've seen
California,
concrete, too.
yeah, California's way far ahead of us on diversion for C&D. It just takes some creative thinking by construction managers, and they make it happen. It works.
Okay, we should certainly
Yeah.
be promoting that, just so we're not creating more truck trips.
Well, the thing is do we have a few more truck trips, or do we have a landfill that's full in 5 years?
Right,
And then we have a lot of truck trips.
So yeah,
Yeah, there's a catch there.
And I think the general statement is, that, you know, this is a new program, and we're gonna have kinks in it as we move forward, and we're gonna work through them as best we can. That's why we have the soft rollout, and we've got a period of time for grace for people to adapt.
Great.
Yeah.
So I notice you have actually a concrete, there's a cost of bringing separated concrete in is lower. You're reducing the charges, which is,
Yeah.
it's great to toot our
That's
horns
to
whenever we can reduce the cost. of
incentivize,
something.
yeah.
Can you explain that one a little bit?
So yeah, concrete right now, we've always struggled with concrete a little bit because we didn't have a good market. We'd crush it, we'd use it on site. Our ag crusher right now has got it pretty well dialed in. We sell it, we make a 1-inch crushed concrete. And it finally caught on, and we're sold out of it right now. So we're getting a good marketable product that people were willing to reuse.
What are they using it for?
I think like on construction sites, they throw it down, you know, on muddy roads and cleans tires and fill material if they need like a structural fill.
Some kind
yeah.
of base
Good
or
stuff.
so.
Yeah, so we've sold out of it for the season. So
I would also like to note that in our most recent stormwater improvements project, which you guys approved recently, we used about 1,000 tons of riprap that was made out of crushed concrete, recycled crushed concrete.
Whoa.
So that was the alternative was to drive down to RMR in Glenwood and buy riprap for $36 a ton. So that was pretty cool.
Great.
So if Kathy wants to maybe talk about some tracking.
yeah,
FTEs?
yes. So a lot of the questions that have come up is like, how do people do the reporting? Well, there's a Green Halo software system out there that does exactly that. So you want to scroll down. So you go into ComDev. It is through ComDev's permit system. The Green Halo would be attached to. You go in, you apply for your new permit, you're made aware that you need a 25% diversion, so you put all this information in, you get your input in. It spits out a QR code, that little scan code up there, that project will use. It can be on a printed piece of paper, it can be on a phone. So every time a load leaves the site and comes to the landfill or goes somewhere else, they could come to the landfill, we scan it, ring in their ticket, it automatically tracks back to this reporting system. And you can track individual permits, as you can see there's 3 permits, and track what they're actually doing on the job in real time. And at the end of the project, that person finishes it up, I'm all done. They print the report out, it comes to us to review, okay, yeah, you met your 25% diversion, you get your deposit back. So it's automatic tracking. If you choose to take metal down to Trinity Recycling or somewhere else, you can actually manually input a permit, your numbers through receipts. If you take dirt somewhere else, there'll be a way that you can input it.
They scan in the receipt or
You
something?
can scan in the receipt, you know.
Record of the.
Yeah, so you can take a picture of it and plop it onto your actual permit tracking site through Green Halo. You can also track overall materials diverted and recycled in the county, so the county can track in real time how we're doing on C&D diversion. So it's a pretty slick system. It doesn't cost a lot. And ComDev right now is in the process of getting their new permit system in place. So I think around March, they're estimating, so we'll get this Green Halo system in March and start testing it.
So, question is, like with our REMP fund, when it comes to the point of actually you're doing what you want a program to do, and all the deposits are getting returned, how are we paying for the full-time new employee that we were gonna pay for with the deposits?
So as you saw in that tiered pricing system, my gut feeling is probably majority of the jobs do not care to separate. So I have a feeling a majority of these jobs are going to be paying the $151 a ton. So that's going to be funded through the tipping fees we take in for this C&D tipping.
But at the beginning of this meeting, you said one full-time position will be paid for out of the deposits. That's different than the tipping fee that goes into the general enterprise fund.
Right, and I think we misspoke there a little bit. So it's
clarifying, because you know how I feel about FTEs. I'm tracking them all.
We feel, and we won't put in a full-time position right away. We're going to test to see how this goes. And through, I think, the higher tipping fees, the $151, what we're estimating, I think we estimated 80% of people are not going to separate loads. So it's a significant amount more money.
We thought that with REMP, that if how many percent of people weren't going to do the right thing and put on-site renewables.
Well, it could be that if everybody's doing the right thing.
So that's what happened with REMP. Now we're looking at
REMP's 20 years into its program, but my concern is what you just said, Kathy. 80% of people probably won't be utilizing this.
So why are we doing this?
So I would say let's watch it, and if that's the case, then maybe we need to triple these fees, because at some point we need to be aggressive. So.
That's great. That's a good point.
And I got an email from a gentleman, a contractor in Carbondale. He's like, this needs to be higher. I was like, okay, I like your point. And like you said, this first year, as we put it into place, we're just going to have to see.
Right, I'm just throwing out things that I'm hearing. The other thing is that I've said to all the other departments in the county, have to be consistent. We're going to have this great program, this Green Halo, which I think is great. So it's supposed to make things more efficient. So I want to make sure that when we have more efficiency, we don't necessarily need full-time employees to run an efficient. We're looking at, it's supposed to make things more efficient, not to make things more work. So I think we need to do this. I think we need to track it very carefully and keep us informed as to what's working, what's not. How do we need to tweak it in the first month or the 6th month or the first year? And because I think the board as a whole is interested enough, definitely interested in doing this, that we need to be involved in how it's working.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely. We'll be back a lot, I have a feeling.
Yeah, and just, George, I really liked your point about if 80% of people don't participate, why are we doing this? And one thing I would just bring up is that since we're the landfill, anything we do down at the landfill or anything we do like this ordinance is going to be a downstream solution to a problem that's upstream. So I would say probably from the downstream side, we can deal with the results, but we can't solve the whole problem. So there might have to be, ways to look at things other cities have done, other cities and counties have done to solve the problem.
We've been
at a
looking
higher
at
level,
construction waste and talking about it for a long time, and I think with everything else we're doing as far as our climate action plan and our energy code and our new land use codes for energy efficiencies, this all plays into how we can better manage these negative impacts of growth and development.
Yeah, I mean, and I was actually just suggesting it's a carrot and a stick. And depending on the response, if it's a positive response, that's great. If we're not getting a response that we're looking for, then we need to look at those rates and make it more of a stick.
Yeah,
Looking at a bigger
agree.
stick.
Yeah, I
not a
completely
smaller
agree.
carrot.
Yeah.
So as with anything, education and outreach is super important. So we're in the process right now. We've got a letter to the contractors and haulers, just alerting them coming January, the tiered pricing system goes into effect. And then ordinance will probably follow a little bit later. We'll have printed brochure materials. We'll do a C&D diversion page on our landfillrules.com. Like Liz had mentioned, January, February is going to be a soft rollout of the tiered pricing. We'll do some education there just to say, hey, you know this load you're bringing in today? This is going to be $151 in March if you don't sort it. So we're going to use those 2 months. And then as we've been talking about, if it's going really well and we're being able to self-fund it, we'll bring in a full-time person eventually. So the timeline, no, maybe, we'll check with you. Timeline, tiered pricing, effective January 1, 2 months soft rollout. We'll install the green halo system probably in spring 2020 once ComDev gets their new permit system up and running. We're looking at, if we're okay with the language today, getting it ready, getting attorney review, and bringing it back for first reading in January with the second reading in February. Full implementation of the C&D diversion code probably in July. And that's what kind of we're thinking right now, with some flexibility as we test it.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you could do that a little bit earlier, because you're right in the heart of construction in July.
Yeah,
It'd be
I
nice to
think
have
we'll
that
look
at the onset. Of course, construction now is year-round, but still, a lot of projects are kicking off in May, and ComDev would have a better idea in terms of when projects are starting. So I would say earlier the better, if possible.
Yeah, we could try to speed that up.
I think in your correspondence,
Yeah.
when you're pushing this out there, they should understand that we're going to try this, and if we're not getting the result we look for, we're going to look for something more stringent, is the way we're headed. So there ought to be plenty of incentive for people to get on board now before we decide we have to make it more heinous, more expensive for them to do the right thing.
Heinous. So can I have two?
Go ahead.
So we've also been looking at construction waste such as products. So how does that fit in with all of this? So when you're doing a deconstructing a house, diverting whatever you can possibly divert, how does that fitting into the thought of what we were doing with doors, windows, building a new warehouse to facilitate storage of those things? How are we, does this fit? How does it, if so?
It absolutely does. So we're in the process right now of building the operations and maintenance facility. Well, it's designed right now.
Right.
So once that is completed, we'll hopefully start construction in spring 2020. So once that gets out of the MRF building, because we use that, the metal warehouse building kind of behind the scale house is sort of a de facto maintenance storage area.
I remember when we built the MRF building.
The good old MRF building. So once we get the new building up and running and equipment stored down there, we're looking at sort of revamping that building or creating 2 new buildings and moving the drop and swap, as we call it, into that building or that building area.
Right.
We'll see what it looks like and what we can afford to make it look like. And then that would be an enclosed drop and swap space that we've been wanting for a while.
Okay. And hopefully we'll be increasing that opportunity for people in the community to drop stuff off. Because I know some people are regular customers. Some
Oh, they
people,
love it.
I know, they come by, I stop by 3 times a week just to see what I might not be missing, I might want to bring home.
You know, if we can get it enclosed.
And his wife's
out
going,
in the
please
weather.
stop going by the landfill. The other question I have is in the document, the Pickens County, Colorado Construction, Demolition, Diversion Regulation Managers Rules. Your definition, I think we talked about this before, the definition of managers. If you go back, there's the solid waste manager and then there's the county manager, but it's not, it needs to be clear which manager.
Okay.
Just to add, because I remember we talked about that and who's managing whom and for what.
For the waste and recycling ordinance, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll clarify that.
thank you.
And for the benefit of people out there understanding how serious we are about this, I like how you highlighted the line that just says, if the diversion report is not completed and submitted, final building inspection will not occur.
You don't get your
So,
CO.
hey, we're serious about this, folks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's one of the sticks, yeah.
There's your big stick.
There's your big stick.
That's the big stick, yeah. Okay.
All right, thanks for that. Anything else you need from us?
No, we'll get this
Good
to the
job, guys.
attorney and formatted properly and come back with first and second reading.
Great, looking forward to it.
Thank Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna keep moving right along. Chad, up. Is that a question for us? Oh, no, okay. We've got the Pitkin County Age Friendly Initiative. Chad was in the building. He's somewhere in the nearby neighborhood.
I saw a bunch of people from, they must be right
Out there.
there.
Oh, the clock's ticking. There you go.
Listen on the new, I didn't bring my new one.
Kathy used up all your time, Chad.
I saw that. I said I would try to make up time.
Where's this flag?
Great, thank you.
If I have more time, let me. Unless you guys have lots of questions.
Okay,
So
well,
I'll
we're
take as
good.
much
Let's
time as you need.
launch on into it. So this is the Pitkin County Age Friendly Initiative.
The rugby players, dad's there. It is out. Pictures are
God,
awesome.
the usual suspects are filing in.
Seniors are here.
You didn't bring any dogs?
No.
Okay,
Happy belated Thanksgiving.
welcome. All right.
You can tell them behave anytime you need to.
Yeah, right. Hey, quiet down out there. This is serious here. All right. Beats the alternative. What do you got for us?
You ready? Okay. So, hi, I'm Chad Fedowitz. I'm the manager of senior services for Pitkin County. And I'm here today to kind of present the final draft, knock on wood, of what was originally called the Aging Well in Our Community plan, and now to be reframed as the Pitkin County Age Friendly Initiative. So I have lots of information that was in the agenda summary and these slides, but I'm going to go through that rather quickly to maybe make up some time for you guys, and then if we have more time for questions or other things like that.
Thanks.
So a little bit more background. Most of you are all aware we had a plan dating back from 2014, and we created the Aging Well Community Planning Initiative with my predecessor, Marty Ames, and many of the people behind me and many others. Then in 2017, Pitkin County was designated an age-friendly community by AARP and the World Health Organization. And so now to about where we are now, we have been working last year or plus in reframing and updating the original plan, particularly within the lens of AARP's what's called the 8 domains of livability. And I'll go into that a little bit more. And then before coming here, we went out into the community and had input sessions, try to get feedback from the community, both here up in Aspen and in Basalt and Redstone, and really anybody that would be willing to talk to us. You've probably heard this from me many times and other meetings you go to about the changing demographics in the state and the country and in our community as well. So just a little highlight of that. For our visual learners out there, I like to have a map to show where older adults are. What's interesting about this compared to a few years ago, we do see older adults moving within the county from Aspen, but moving toward Basalt, the Mid-Valley area. But they're still remaining, for the most part, in our county. They're just shifting throughout our larger community, which I find interesting. But it's not a mass exodus is what some people may think it is. So the vision of this revision is connected to the original vision, is to assist and support the community in developing strategies to build resources and lead change around aging. I'll paraphrase myself a little bit there. And I'm hoping, and we are all hoping, that this initiative or plan will produce viable long-term community goals and objectives and action steps to address a growing older adult population. But really, we're all going to grow older, hopefully. And so that perspective of the whole community at large, or age-friendly without the basis of age, meaning an older adult as a premise, what's good for an older adult is good for an 8-year-old or a pregnant woman or someone who has a disability, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, even though my department is senior services and that's my primary concern, I wanted to really look at it in a wider lens. I feel like I need to. So framing this revision update, it was kind of both, so it's hard to clarify that. We, again, took the original plan and looked at it through the lens of these 8 domains, which comes from ARP and the World Health Organization. And we're really looking at this plan and those domains as a guide for addressing both the challenges and the opportunities of aging. So yes, I think we're very well aware of the challenges of aging. Many people don't like to talk about the opportunities of aging. I'm not one of those people. And also that this could hopefully, obviously, I think, assist Pickens County, but also the region, I think as well, could be hopefully supportive of our neighbors up and down the valley. And showing our commitment, which I think we've demonstrated already. And so the 8 domains of livability, that's this list here, going in different categories. And so when we did a revision into these 8 domains, we kind of look at these different categories. What exists today, paraphrasing, in this area? Why is this area particularly significant to an aging population? What are some relatively recent accomplishments? Then goals, opportunities, and next steps. So this next section of my slides, I go into a little more detail of the domains and their goals. I might go through this next section rather quickly. It is in the agenda summary, and you have the slides and the actual draft of the plan itself. But if you have questions or whatnot, please feel free. Yes, George.
Well, I mean, one of the biggest challenges, and it's come up for years now, is to try to find a senior service facility that is meeting the growing needs and demands. And of course, the challenge always has been and will continue to be finding the space, the cost of the land, the cost of the facility. So I know you and your senior council have been working on this for several years. Have you come up with any sort of ideas how to even start to address this?
The short answer would be yes. As you just stated, it's a very complex issue. Quite honestly, George, I don't see this coming full circle anytime soon. Not for lack of will at the county's part or other things, just all the challenges that you described. So I think we as staff, myself, and then the senior council need to be open about any possibility that may arise that may be, quote, viable for a new or updated space. I also think there could be some things to think about at the county level of looking at our current space and what things could be potentially done to maximize that space or expand the current space that we have within the limited footprint of where we currently exist. I don't know. We, as staff, has been talking about that the last few weeks, actually, of if the long-term goal is a new, bigger space, all that, and that's hopefully within the tenure of my time at the county, assuming I follow my predecessor's benchmark. So before I retire, is what I'm trying to say. If that is the long-term goal before I would retire, probably something needs to happen before that. And so possibly there's potential to look at our current space to expand it or do a quote major facelift on our current space. But I think we have to be open to those different opportunities that when they arise, because most likely if it's a land or building or space thing, it's going to be something that pops up to the surface. And what is the will and interest and viability of looking at it for either solely for older adults or mixed use of like older adults and say a daycare. It's a very popular model, or in combination to like a rec center, for example. So that doesn't really answer your question.
No, it does, but I'm just curious, have you also looked at the opportunity to, rather than, in addition to expanding your current space, providing a satellite space that perhaps is in Mid-Valley? Because as you noted, more and more of the older population is moving down valley. And so it would actually be much more convenient to have a satellite space in the mid-valley versus having the seniors then have to come all the way back up to Aspen.
Yeah, we have talked about that. I know that Human Services is working in the Health One space by Mountain Family in the Stubbies building there. We're still kind of evaluating and working with Eagle County about what are the gaps and needs that Eagle County can't fill. In my understanding, talking to Eagle County, their site in Elgibel, it's at capacity. They physically have no more space to serve people.
Yeah.
So how can we fill that gap, not necessarily duplicate services they're providing, but supplement? We won't be able to provide meals most likely unless other things would probably happen. But we have had those discussions. How can we have a satellite kind of light site in the Mid-Valley and provide some services similar to what we're doing in Redstone?
Right. So, one other point is, the Eagle County facility, they actually have space. They've got land.
Right.
And we actually have,
Some allowed
by
square footage.
contract, we've got the ability to build up to 5,000 square feet. Isn't large, but perhaps there's an opportunity if we work to Eagle County to be able to expand that 5,000 to more of a usable space if it's 10, 15, or 20,000.
Sure.
Yeah,
I would support that.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's important, and I know you probably already know this, but I'm going to reiterate, is that I think all of us, the 5 members of this board, whenever we go out on our travels and we hear of opportunities for partnerships or just opportunities out there that would address the needs of the growing the demographics of the older population, especially with Northwest COG and their involvement. When anything pops up, I'm always like, so what are you planning? Where do you want to plan it?
Sure.
How can we work on it, taking your ideas and maybe growing them over here or vice versa? So I think it's a topic of conversation at meetings where you wouldn't expect it to be, and it pops up. So I think we're always out there looking for, possible solutions and just being creative.
Yeah, I agree, and I think more and more we'll see that as far as any of us, if we're in the aging world or not, hearing more and more conversation about aging. Currently, Colorado is the 3rd fastest aging state, and really soon we're going to be the 2nd.
Yeah.
And that's not a horrible thing, but I think we as communities need to kind of look at it seriously and see what is actually possible and realistic going forward. So I'm just going to go through these. Every domain has like these 2 or 3 sentences in the beginning, and I'll just read this one as an example for outdoor spaces and buildings. Here we kind of ask these questions: the ability to conveniently and safely navigate in the natural and built environments. To what extent does the outdoor and built environment encourage active community engagement for an aging population? Now that one particularly does call out older adults, but not all of our statements do. We try to see how general could we ask some of these questions and still kind of pertain to older adults. So then we go into transportation, and some of these areas have many goals and some have very few. And all of these goals in this revision or update come directly from the original plan. We changed some verbiage, we combined a couple, but I felt there was tons of work that went into the original plan, and even though I've been here for a number of years, I felt it was my duty to really honor all that work and move it forward. So I wanted to remain true to all that hard work that was put into the original plan. So here's a few more. Number 8 is the healthcare one, which is the largest one. It still remains the largest one. So we get through all the domains. So the age-friendly initiative, this is written right in the document, that Payne County Senior Services will be the catalyst to implement this initiative, but dedicated and passionate members of the larger community have contributed and supported to the work so far, and we're hoping that it will continue to champion this initiative and all the work and motivate many different partners and departments of a county or the different municipalities to work on this plan and look at at least the goals that we set forth. I have to document my citations, and really I wanted to present this to you all to approve this plan, and I think I wrote in my agenda more of throw it out there to see of a proclamation about this initiative. That was a recommendation of Nan. Say, well, ask them and see what they say. And so now if you have questions, comments, I'm more than happy to hear.
Yeah, didn't we do a proclamation when we were first going for the designation of a
I
healthy
don't
aging
believe we did a
community?
proclamation.
Yeah.
I know in the application process, we have to sign a letter of commitment, I'm sorry, and send it off in our application, and that was part of that. Otherwise, you typically do a proclamation for Older Americans Month in May. I also submitted in the packet a letter of support that would be included in the plan that's in there in the draft form right now. You saw a blank page that says the state of Colorado. The state, through the advisor on aging, will be sending me a letter supporting our work. They're just slow. So once that is sent, it will be included in the final version. It's just we do not have it yet.
Are these Pitkin County residents?
No.
We need to get some local folks' photos there.
We had challenges with the cover page. All the rest of the photos are.
Like,
But
I
the
don't
cover
recognize
page-
these
Doesn't know any of them, right?
We can do any revision later to adjust some photos, but.
Well, and as far as the proclamation, in our packet, it says a resolution. It would not be by reso. But we've had some discussions recently about proclamations at the board level, so we need to check with John Peacock about that. Yeah, and see how, and I thought we did something too.
Yeah, but anyway, as you said, normally in May, we do a
For Older Americans
Older
Month.
American, so we could certainly tie that in, at least by then, a proclamation supporting the importance of
Bringing
this
that as a
initiative.
key focus in that proclamation for that month.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That sounds good. I'd support that. I think everyone probably would. Great.
Yeah, so as we all get older, we get younger at heart, right?
Not necessarily.
Be like Klaus.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we got a great picture for your
Yes.
presentation. It's
So I don't know if you
Well,
have
sit
any
there.
other questions, or you had a chance to read the draft letter that I included, and feel free to have changes to that, or.
I guess I didn't realize it was a draft. I thought it had already gone off, and
No, it's all draft until you say it's not.
so we actually sign it at the bottom. And if you would like, if it comes back, we can have John or Kara, somebody look it over. We could all sign it. I think it would be appropriate for all five of us to sign it.
I'm comfortable with whatever you decide, so.
And there's some letters I think look
Great.
good when all five of our signatures are on it.
Sure. So hand it to Cara. She'll get it back to us. We'll move forward. I love that. 5 signatures on that.
Yeah,
Great.
I'd like to sign it.
Great. Any other?
Yeah. No, I think
And I'll find you
it's
some
it's about
older
time.
Americans to put.
Yeah, we'll work
You
on
didn't think
pictures.
we'd notice that, did you?
No, I know you would.
She could have said, "Oh yeah, they live in
Yeah, they live down the street. I just haven't seen them in a while.
We did try.
All right. Thanks for
Okay,
coming.
Well, thank you very much.
Great. Thanks everybody for coming in. Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you. How's that baby? Awesome. She's so cute. Henry Rose, she is so cute.
Okay, folks, we're right on schedule. Chad got us back in. He gets an extra star, an extra helping of porridge or something. Thank you. Up next, the Crystal River Stream Bank stabilization in the nick of time.
Yes, well, we have an aging stream bank, so.
Yeah,
well,
a dynamic
Cindy
stream.
can come up too.
He's been sitting patiently in the.
Now, we just push old cars up against the stream bank, right? Don't we still do that?
They do that in Rifle
You
and
know,
Eagle County.
that is a thought here. We could just drive a few off, put it as the base.
Actually, you might find some when you go in there. Is the scary part.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to avoid that one.
Yeah.
I think we would have found them by now.
Yeah.
Because
They would have shown up literally.
because with the amount of erosion in 1 year,
Yeah.
we would have found whatever was in there. So anyway, I'm Gary Tenenbaum. I'm the director of Pickens County Open Space and Trails. And with me is Seth Mason from Low-Tech Hydrological and Brendan Langenhusen. Close? Close enough. From SGM.
Great,
And-
welcome.
And we've been working on this project for the last year. Budget of 2019, we came to you guys saying we needed a certain amount of money to study this area. This area is right along Highway 133. It's near Thomas Road, and it's right along the Crystal Trail. And when we initially got the budget, what we thought we had was at least a year, maybe a little bit longer, to get something together, to get something designed, so we could come back to you and go, okay, we'll have a project, we'll do it in fall 2020. However, what happened is we had a very good year for runoff, which was a very long duration. It wasn't the highest runoff we ever had, but it was a high duration runoff, and it took a lot of this stream bank away that we thought could spend a few more years looking at. And so this has become a more urgent item. When I was at the budget presentations, I discussed this and I said, we're putting it in the budget, but I said I'd come back to give you guys an update and at least explain what we're looking at here, because it's not an inexpensive project. But what we have done to date is design a project. We value engineered it to really address, the critical area of the failure of this bank, and it's impacting the Crystal Trail. The Crystal Trail's falling away, as you can see in the pictures, and it will soon impact the Helms Ditch, which is under the Crystal Trail. We're kind of responsible for that ditch because the landowner allowed us to pipe it, to put the trail on top, and of course Cold Mountain Ranch is a little concerned about how much longer they have before their ditch is exposed. But we came up with a plan, and when we do things, we also look at our biodiversity initiative and really look at things in a way that go, let's do this in a way that we could potentially bioengineer this. This is not a restoration project. This is a stabilization project. But at least let's incorporate some natural revegetation into this and make this aesthetically pleasing, but also have some ecological function. And by having ecological function, this could be a model for other areas along the Crystal or Roaring Fork or other streams in the future. So I'm going to have Seth really explain the ins and out of the project, but the Open Space and Trails Board looked at this in November, and they approved recommending to you guys the funding for $570,000 for Alternative B. And we went to Healthy Rivers and Streams. They appreciated us coming in and talking to them, and Seth did a great job explaining the project. And while they look upon this as a potential good model for other areas of the county, they were like, right now they've got a lot of things, as you know, under their budget for next year. So they weren't recommending to participate in this one, but they will definitely look to participate in future ones as we look at other areas of the Crystal. They also didn't recommend to move forward with anything more because, as you saw in your packet, there's an Alternative A, which is doing a lot more stream bank kind of stabilization and a lot more, revegetation, and it basically doubles the cost. So for that, we were kind of sticking to the critical area, but protecting that stream bank from really truly eroding. I think we have time, and Seth can explain that.
Yeah, just quickly, Gary, I don't know what the projects are with Healthy Rivers and Streams, to tell you the truth. So it seems like there may be an opportunity if they don't want to participate in this specific project, but as long as you're doing the work along this stretch, to perhaps look at adding to it, because it seems like it would fall perfectly within their mission.
It does in a way, but the thing is, this project, the way we're doing it, it accomplishes the need here. This basically, if you really wanted to do the whole stream bank, we could, it's not critically important to do it. Seth can go over that piece. And in the end, you know, they were looking at the fact as like, let's do this piece. Let's not, an extra $500,000 or $250,000 doesn't get you the bang for your buck, where we could potentially use that funding in other areas of the Crystal River. And so that's really where they went. It wasn't like they just didn't want to spend money on it because they had other projects, but they're looking at the fact that if we want to replicate this on many sections of the Crystal, we're going to need a lot of funding, and we're going to have to do both programs together.
Yeah, so just one last comment. Yeah, it's glad to hear that you're starting to communicate and coordinate between the two programs, because I think that's really important, and it hasn't really happened in the past as well as I would have liked to see it. So I think I would encourage you to continue to do that, meet with the Open Space and Trails Board and staff, and identify future projects that are in alignment with both of your mission statements.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seth.
Good afternoon. As Gary mentioned, my name is Seth Mason with Lodic Hydrological. I'm working on this project for the county with a great team, with Brendan from SGM, and then with the folks at DHM Design. We've been responsible for developing the conceptual designs, producing the report that I think was included in your packet. SGM is doing the hard work on the engineering side, and they'll be producing the final design, and DHM is doing the vegetation planning for the project. So with the next couple of slides, I just want to introduce you to the project, help you understand some of the information that's included in the report that you have in your packet. This is just a location map to help you understand where exactly we're talking about. We're on the Crystal River. We're south of Carbondale, several miles, near the intersection of Thomas Road and Highway 133. The river here in this photo is flowing from left to right. Highway 133 is out of the map toward the top, and you can see this highlighted.
You might be able to get a cursor on there. I don't know if Gary can pull up the cursor. Rich, do you know how to do that? There's just gives you a little bright red spot in case you want to show us anything in particular.
Yeah, that would be great.
We've seen it work before.
There you go.
There, it's there. There
okay.
it is. Excellent, thanks.
All right, that's really helpful. Okay, so Highway 133 is right here. Intersection of Thomas Road and Highway 133 is here. You can see the Crystal Valley Trail is this alignment right here. Again, the river is flowing from this side downstream, and we're on this outside bend of the river here where the river flows close to both the trail and the highway, where we're seeing this erosion against this hill slope that's leading to these mass failures and endangering the infrastructure. These are photos. Right up here is the trail in that critical zone right on top. Again, the trail looking off the edge down toward the Crystal. It's about a 30-foot drop. Pretty hazardous for folks on the trail, and for the reasons that should be pretty obvious, hazardous also to the infrastructure itself.
Well, and I'll tell you too, we don't have just two cones there anymore. We fenced it off. So
yeah, thanks.
Just to make sure that just not
dicey.
2 cones and a
Piece
red
of tape.
piece of tape.
Maybe a no lifeguard on duty sign.
Yeah.
So this area of the Crystal River is prone to some movement. This map here just gives you some sense of how the river channel itself has changed in this location between 1993 and the present day. And we've seen this kind of progressive widening at this location. Again, where these pink arrows are, this is that critical zone where we have the erosion close to the trail. And essentially what's occurring here is we've got this deposition in the form of a mid-channel bar that's driving this widening of the channel and the erosion of that stream bank.
It's not just looking at the natural shape of the meander and the river there. So you've got the bar in the middle is actually pushing it again, rather than some other natural. I'd expect it to erode on that side.
Yes, you certainly would. Yeah, this is a completely reasonable thing to be happening on a river. You would expect on the outside of a bend in a powerful river like the Crystal that you're going to see erosion, that you're going to see the formation of cut banks, very steep banks. The issue here is that we've got infrastructure that we can't have wash away. And so we need to kind of stop this natural process. So the formation of that mid-channel bar is not problematic in and of itself. It's really a problem, an occurrence that's driving this erosion that's a problem because we decided to put infrastructure somewhere that was prone to failure. Yeah.
Well, it could keep going and then be in the crystal in 133.
Yep, yep.
That's right.
Which is what it wants to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. Okay, just another aerial giving you a sense of where that Helms Ditch alignment sits. Again, it's right underneath the trail. This is an older photo that was taken when we had a little bit more earth on the hill slope between the river and the trail itself. So at the points of these arrows is essentially where the river exists now. So Gary mentioned that we were, as a team, we were faced with the task of coming up with a design proposal that would not only stabilize the hill slope, but do it in a way that maintained some aesthetic character for the site and also promoted as much ecological function as we thought we could. And that thinking resulted in the elevation of alternatives A and B, and you can see those alternatives in that report again. A and B both included very similar design elements, a riprap revetment out in the river channel itself, backfilled with alluvium, that's the stone from the river bottom, to make a small floodplain deck, and then on top of that floodplain deck, compacted soil backfilling up to the elevation where the slope was failing. So this is just a very rough sketch of what that looks like in place when it's all done.
How do you define revetment? That's a new word for me.
Revetment. It's essentially a fancy word for a wall.
So it's a riprap wall, but I like revetment better.
Yeah. So in plan view, what that concept looks like again, so plan view is if we're looking straight down on it. From upstream to downstream, we've got this floodplain deck. This is this flat, relatively flat surface that extends from the base of the existing hill slope out into the river channel. Along its face, we have this riprap revetment. That's an erosion-resistant surface. And then we have several grade control structures, these elements here, that are intended to prevent erosion, downcutting of that floodplain surface, so keep that deck in place. And then on top of all of it, we do some vegetation, plantings, container plantings, willow staking, and the like, and even do some seeding and irrigation in this area right against the critical zone where we have that steep backfill slope that's not going to be fed water by the river itself because it's at a much higher elevation. So there are lines cut through this plan view document, and in the report that you have in your packets, you can actually see what those cross sections look like as sectional details, as sectional typicals. We're going to just look quickly at the kind of typical design elements that are associated with this cross section here. So right through the middle, right through that critical zone, this is the area where we're seeing the most erosion. So again, we've got that riprap revetment, that erosion-resistant surface that is guarding the rest of the work that we've done back here from kind of stripping out due to the hydraulic forces that the river is applying on its stream bank. And then we see here, this is all that backfilled alluvium. So we've excavated some material from the middle of the river, from that mid-channel bar that we were talking about, pulled it back against the existing hill slope here. So this is our failing hill slope. Filled to a certain elevation with that subangular stone, or excuse me, with that alluvium. And then on top of that, we do compacted soil backfill up to the point where the trail is actually starting to fail. And then on top of everything, We do those plantings, and eventually we hope that it looks something like this, where we've got full-grown cottonwood trees thriving in that floodplain deck. We expect to see a lot of willows, and there may be a whole host of other species that are able to flourish in this very wet riverine zone down here. And then up on the hill slope, thinner vegetation, dryland vegetation, similar to what exists on adjacent hill slopes.
What's a
If you wanna go-
what's it? A thalweg?
A thalweg, that's another fancy term. Probably should have included a glossary on that report. A thalweg just means the center of flow, essentially, in a river. It's the if you looked at the river and you kind of guessed where most of the water was flowing, that's the thalweg.
So and so it's made out of the same material, say, as the riprap liner. It looks to be just another diameter of stone before you get your alluvium backfill.
Correct. The riprap is just a larger stone, a larger subangular stone that is harder for the river to move.
And where are we going to find that as a supply?
That is a great question. We've been talking about phone calls to CDOT and inquiring about whether we can use some of their stockpiled stone. You know, they have a lot from the scaling work that they do on McClure Pass and in other locations, but I don't think we've had those conversations yet. Brendan probably.
Yeah, we haven't got all the way there. I know Glenwood Springs on their Two Rivers Park project is using some of the
They're
rock.
doing right now. That's big.
Yeah.
Surprisingly
And
big.
so SGM designed that as well, and we are using some rock from CDOT when they did the Grand Avenue Bridge. So CDOT had it all stockpiled, and so they were able to capitalize and take that rock, I think for free actually.
Wow.
You just have to haul it.
Don't use it all there. We can have another place to put it.
So I think there should be some left as well. So we're looking at both those options to see what's cheapest and best.
Start your ears open on any other big project we might have somewhere in the valley.
One of the things that I did want to point out on this drawing as well is there is a secondary protection on the back end of the slope. That's the existing hillside. And so if everything fails due to some catastrophe, you still have some extra protection along your existing hill slope. So.
Question about, just the natural hydraulic of the river. Its natural inclination is to push that direction and carve that out. I think you've addressed it. Your riprap liner is basically re-channelizing the river in a way, which is there any need to do that farther upstream, or dare you just to take away some of the force of that water so it's not directed on all these improvements you've made? So just thinking the next big flood stage, high volume year, that we don't want to wash it out again because we were trying to be efficient and economical.
Certainly.
Is there anything that can be done upstream, or did anything ever happen that may have contributed to the direction of that flow toward that bank? Any other upstream activity, for instance, or changes that could have helped?
We think that the things that are happening there are natural circumstances that weren't necessarily caused by the actions of any upstream party. It's just a function of the geometry of the channel at that location and the planform alignment of the river through that section of the valley. To your first question, we certainly want to protect that backfilled slope. That is the primary design element that we're using to hold the trail up. And so this floodplain deck, as you see here, this is, again, conceptual, does extend upstream and downstream from that backfilled slope. And if I didn't include any of the engineering drawings here that are in Appendix D, I think, in your packet. But in those drawings, you will see that the floodplain deck itself does extend above and below the backfill slope, and the intent is to protect it, protect that backfill slope with that design element from a future high flow. That is it still 600 feet that the full revetment extends?
Yeah, 600 to 800, something like that.
Yeah, 600 feet. So we've got 600 feet of rock revetment protecting that 130-foot backfill.
Got it.
And it's tied in at the upstream and the downstream end at locations that we think are appropriate to prevent unraveling of this design.
On the downstream side, we'll have that rock lining going all the way to where there's some existing riprap from where the bridge is. So there was some place there, so we'll tie in on that side, on the downstream side. And on the upstream side in this picture, you can see, we'll tie in close, right around there.
This is, so that floodplain deck will start right here and will extend down at about this location all the way down to here. So it's a large design element for the backfill that will be placed here.
It'll be variable, so you'll have just the lining, you'll have just the rock against some of the existing slope, and then you'll have that floodplain deck widen to this critical area, and then it will decrease back down. So
No dredging or anything with the channel itself to deepen the channel and try and keep the water flow in a.
No, we will. That whole rock bar in that
Yeah, I
middle.
was just seeing that.
Getting moved.
Yeah, so everything where it says failing hill slope,
Yeah,
that title block, all that will be recontoured.
bring it this way.
Yep. So you want your channel to be centralized right in the middle and make a nice alignment, and then we'll use all that material back up on the hill slope.
So at the end of the day, will the force from the river be less or just distributed? I'm trying to think, how do you decide? We don't want to focus that energy elsewhere as much as we want to dissipate it, right? So we're not going to erode something else.
I was just saying, downriver, we don't want to take out the bridge.
We certainly don't want to take out the bridge. And we did spend some time thinking about upstream and downstream effects of this design. We have that revetment is contoured in a way that aligns with a recent historical channel alignment. And by looking at historical channel behaviors in this location and thinking about sediment sources locally and from upstream and how those play out given the hydraulics of the channel at this location, we don't have any reason to believe that the changes that we're proposing here endanger downstream infrastructure or downstream property owners. And there is some language in the report that deals with that. But those are these are really good thoughts, and certainly you want to be thinking about these things when you do start monkeying with hydraulics and rivers.
Sure.
You want to be really confident in what you're proposing.
It's very persistent, the hydrologic force from a river, right? It just keeps working on you.
Is that road, that bridge and that road, that's the road up to Crystal Island Ranch, right? We don't want to cause any problems up there.
Well, and the reality is both sides of the river here are Pickens County open space.
Right.
So up to the road. And the reality too is we do have a public access easement on this. So
To get
to get here. So we're going to be able to access everything from this road and obviously if we damage the road, we'll fix it on the end. But the bridge is a pretty sturdy bridge, and so.
What part of open space is that? What's the parcel?
Thompson Creek open space.
Right.
So that goes all the way from where the cows
Right.
are all the way to Thompson Creek. From Thompson Creek all the way through to right here, right at that road, Thomas Road.
Below
So
that.
we kind of meander through there, but that's all part of Thompson Creek open
But then
space.
the Fender pastures are just further downriver from there.
The Sewell.
No, what's that parcel?
Which sustainable settings?
No, they're upriver.
Yeah.
From this.
Oh, downriver is Cold Mountain Ranch.
Coal Mountain Ridge.
Yeah.
Just one last question for me on the little inlet up there you see on the left side of your frame.
Yeah.
Is that like a high water? Is that always there? That little finger, that little braided?
It is.
Section?
Yeah. So there's flow. Let's see the best way to
geez.
see it. You can kind of see it, although the colors kind of mask it. There's a small channel here, and if you look at the crystal from the mouth of the canyon, almost to town, but particularly from the mouth of the canyon down to this location, the form that it wants to assume is this anti-branching form where you have these islands. And so if you gave this river another 50 years at this location, you probably end up with another vegetated mid-channel island here and bifurcated flow around that island. It's so this is the result of this thing playing out.
Interesting. All right. Great. Well, it sounds like your board's settled on an option that they like best. It's economical, but it'll get the job done. We're not cutting corners too much. The price differences are pretty great.
The price, I mean, really, truly, we'd love to do more, but, when I look at this, it's hard to recommend more. What can you do with an extra $500,000 or $250,000? And this is not a restoration project. This is a stabilization project. So we could do so much more with the extra funds. But the good thing about this project is we kept to the goals was to create a bioengineered stabilization project that we could potentially model in other areas of the Crystal and Roaring Fork. So we feel that, this was a good compromise and that's going forward. And so basically today is just to see if there's a head nod to keep that in the budget and to get this hopefully done before high water of next year. And so that's why we're going to move at 100 miles an hour.
You're not compromising on the robustness of the stabilization project. If there's any compromise, it would be on the aesthetic or the speed, or the aesthetic concern seems to be where that's not as a critical thing here. Is that how?
Yeah, correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, but we're not compromising on reinforcing and rebuilding that bank.
No, I've asked these guys every time. It's like, okay, if we do this, basically the reality is these are the slopes that would be, backfilled to, and you see how far the trail is and the highway is away. The Holy Cross pole is here, but that's not ours. So they have room to move it if they need to. But other than that, I think if we protect this, we're not going to have to do anything for a really long time. I won't say never,
right,
but a really long time.
So I noticed that you have a contingency built into the budget. Knowing what happened with the Castle Creek Trail, how that budget doubled, what sort of guarantees do we have? Will we have a contractor guarantee on price?
Well, the thing is this is SGM's best guess because they're doing a project right now, so they took actual numbers to put in there, plus the 20% contingency on top of that. We don't know until we bid it of what we're going to get, but this is a best guess, and I hope I'm not back here asking for more. I'm hoping that we can do it within this budget.
No lawsuits.
Well, it's just, it's just super difficult, and that's, with the Castle Creek, that's why we did the design build, because we had an estimate, and the estimate was not near good enough. At least on this one, we have a project that they're working on. They have real numbers, plus adding a 20% contingency on that. Going into a 30% contingency, I'd rather come back to you guys if this doesn't really make it. But I'm hopeful that, we're moving fast. You put the number out there, the contractors see that number. And especially the contractors is working on the project there, and they're like, they're ready. They'll start to get the feel of, can we do it for this? So we'll see.
Yeah, all right.
I think we need to. So you're talking getting it done by high water of 2020.
We're right now. We're
Let's
moving.
start, like we're gonna start moving
with the head
rocks.
nod today. They are full on designing this so we can go out to bid in January. So that's our point, is to move forward. We already have most of the permits. The only other permit we need is with ComDev, and we have Catherine Christoph working with us on this project. So we already have a Corps of Engineer permit. We're fully ready to go if we can get this designed and bid, and we get a decent bid. So
great, excellent.
Revetment, I'm never
Thumbs
gonna
up.
forget
Great.
that.
Gravity never sleeps.
No, I know.
Neither does the Crystal
Well,
River.
that's why we got really scared when
Crystal
this
Valley.
happened this year. We were like,
Oh my
oh, I
God.
thought we'd have time and be okay, but we don't.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Well,
thank you.
thank you.
All right,
Thanks for
guys.
coming. Thanks for
Thanks,
the
gentlemen.
great
Appreciate it.
graphics and the the visuals are great. It's
Well,
really
once
helpful.
the public
It's
starts
awesome.
seeing this,
So-
we want to make sure that you guys are fully aware of what all this project is about, because this is going to be a lot of work that's going on in the river, and you know you're going to get a phone call or 4 or 10 about it. But we've already, with Healthy Rivers and Streams, the Crystal River Restoration Group, a lot of people know this is happening, so this shouldn't be too much of a shock, but I'm sure you will get a call.
No.
Yeah.
It's that new hydro project.
So we're gonna take a 15-minute break?
Do we need a break right now? Is that where we are? We are,
We're
okay.
at break. Thank you.
We'll be back at 3:15, everybody. Thanks, Grassroots.
So what are they doing?
Okay, we are live. We're back. This is our work session, and we're looking at fourth quarter budget supplemental requests. Welcome.
Good afternoon. And the first of the fourth quarter supplemental request is for the jail, and we have Ron and Rob here to present that request.
Great.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. Glad you're
Ron
here.
Ryan, Undersheriff. I'm here with Rob Nye, Detention Sergeant. We're here for a budget supplemental related to medical for the jail for some expenses we've incurred, primarily related to the difficulty in providing medical care in our jail in this valley. We operated for, well, first let me say that I'll do the best I can to answer some of your questions. Kim was going to be here, but she's out of town and had some transportation issues. So between Rob and I, hopefully we'll give you all the info you need. It was a long-standing agreement with a local doctor that worked great for this community to provide medical care to our inmates. As time went on and his business changed, it left us having to look for other means, which in some areas the board is up to speed on after the budget presentation for 2020. And this is filling a gap of expenses related to that, plus an increase in the type of medical problems that our inmates have been experiencing, which directly affect the costs.
Wow. Questions?
No, I totally support it.
What, I thought this was in, wasn't this request in the original budget presentation?
We requested, both for 2019, we requested an increase in nursing services, and then in 2020, another increase in the nursing services to have I think it's a 24/7 model and company to provide the services. In this request is not the nursing, it's hospital costs when an inmate needs to be hospitalized, and then also physician costs, and then just medical supplies.
Oh, I see. So if inmate needs to, do they go to AVH and or?
Depending on the type of medical care, in some ways the easiest is an emergency situation because it's just built into a local system. But when it comes to the ongoing care that they receive from a physician, if it can be met by the doctor we're using here, and if it's a specialty, then we have to do something different with them. Is that accurate, Rob?
Yeah, it really depends on what the thing is. One of our biggest ones right now is we have one inmate that currently has to have a specialized surgery, which is a large chunk of the money that we're asking for.
That's reflected in this, that one specific case.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in this number right here.
So what happens if someone gets arrested and gets pending trial and an interim is in jail, and if they have, let's say it's a pre-existing or not, whose responsibility is that? Why would the county have to pick that up? I mean, understanding they probably don't have insurance, but I mean, the hospital has a debt. They know they've got indigent care. So why would the county have to be picking those?
Yeah, I think Rob might be able to speak to that more accurately than I can, but I know that there are laws pertaining to once they're in custody, it becomes our responsibility, regardless of insurance and other things that they might have.
Yeah, I can't list them specifically, but there are constitutional requirements that we as a jail have to provide, and unfortunately, that's one of them is the burden of the cost of their medical care.
And it has been for as long as I can recall.
Yeah.
And before that, way back.
And we've often had opportunities to negotiate with the hospital if it's local and if it is pre-existing, but those are, I think, few and far between where we have any benefit from that.
All right.
Wow. Okay. So what we're seeing here with that increase, because we're going up dramatically on hospital services for one specific incident, and then physician services, medical supplies that's spread out across the rest of the operation and the population. Is that how we interpret that? With the hospital services here, do you know, is the 50, basically it's a $50,000, well, it's an $80,000 increase. $80,000, is that entire $80,000 taken up by this one case, or is it?
I don't think it's all for one case. I know there is one particular one that has driven up costs, but I think they've had a
it's
few
kind of ongoing is what the impression
that
I get.
are more than what they might normally expect in a year.
Right. I don't know, if maybe you guys aren't the experts on this, but regarding mental health versus actual medical care, medical needs, hospital services could include ER visits for a mental health situation too, I assume. I'm just wondering, are we, anything you can?
I do think that the request here is more specifically to medical, but I don't know if there's another component to that.
Mostly Mind Springs has been taking care of the mental health component of it. Most of this number is specifically for ongoing medical issues, upcoming surgeries, hospital bills that were incurred during transports and those types of things.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. All right.
So it comes back to us tomorrow.
Yes,
We'll
it
see it-
does.
We'll see it soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Good to meet you.
Thanks, Connie.
This doesn't want to. There we go. Next, we have a supplemental for Munis ERP annual maintenance fees. And this was a little miscommunication on budgeting. I thought that the annual maintenance fee for Munis was included in the overall project cost, but since we actually went live in 2019, it was not. So this was just overlooked when we were budgeting for 2019. The dollar amount is a little over $110,000. And 2019 is a bit of an odd year in that it's a crossover year. We went live with Munis on June 24th of this year, and we've had to maintain Eden and Ascentus and Munis in 2019. Now in 2020, as we go live with the payroll and HR portion of Munis, the Ascentus maintenance fees will drop away except for a small access fee, and the same with Eden. So in 2020, we'll be saving about $60,000 on Ascentus maintenance fees and about $20,000 on Eden maintenance fees. So that makes up for a good portion of the new costs. But with Munis, we do have a more robust product and many more modules than what we had with Eden, so a lot more capability.
What will our annual, at the end of the day, when we add the HR components, what will our annual maintenance cost be to have the Munis?
Munis, $120,000
a year.
Yep.
I love these computer programs. I know they're necessary, needed, and it just is frustrating.
Yeah, but we do have, again, some offsets with Eden would be going away, so.
Yeah, but we have a part of the year we're still gonna have
Yeah,
those in here.
both, exactly.
So, and it's
Yeah.
surprising to see this much of an increase.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and the fact it is taken, and which we so appreciate, it took a great deal of staff time. And, you know, again, these are supposed to be more efficient, more productive programs, and I know it's just the cost of doing business, but when we start to add into, now we have this coming out in ComDev, and now we're gonna have another one at the landfill, and, you know, and it would be nice if at some point we saw cost savings and efficiency and staff saving.
Yeah.
But I'm keeping my hopes up for
No,
that.
and we fully understand.
I'm gonna keep trying.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have any choice on this one. We gotta get her done.
This is where we're headed. Okay.
Okay. Next, we have a request from Fleet, and I think Brian is going to speak to that one.
Brian's getting a lot of FaceTime
I
today.
am, thank you. Thanks for tolerating it. This is a request, so kind of the prelude. I'm Brian Pettit, I'm the Public Works Director. And every year we budget fleet based on historic costs, and we do our best to guess what our costs are going to be for that upcoming year based on fuel pricing and that type of thing. We do not budget for catastrophic failures or large incurrences of expenditures. This supplemental request has a little bit of both. Two large things happened that cost a lot of money. One was we had a complete engine failure of a high-speed broom at the airport, and that cost about $25,000. Then we had our screener at the landfill. A lot of things broke on the conveyor system. That cost a large amount of money. But we also had a lot of repairs that occurred this year that to try to pinpoint that would be ridiculous, because it's just over time we've accumulated that expense. Something that happened, there's an increase in service level at the airport with regard to how they're using their high-speed brooms. These are 22-foot brooms with bristles that are about 3 to 4 feet in diameter. So they ordered more broom bristles this year to the tune of $75,000. A lot of those bristles are in stock and will be used throughout the winter of 2019 and 2020. So that's almost an investment in next year. Finally, we overshot our fuel use historically. So we'll be looking at that fuel budget for 2020 and making sure that we've got it adjusted appropriately. But the total supplemental request is $240,000 to cover what has already been done and for the bristles that will be used in the future.
So, so for the airport, under the additional broom brushes, it's $810,000 total?
Correct.
That's, how much does a truck that carries those bristles cost?
Yeah, about that.
Seems like a lot. And do these airport things come out of the airport enterprise fund?
They get charged back
Okay. I'm like,
to
I
the
don't want Brian
airport
paying
through the
for all
fleet
that stuff.
allocation.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is actually a net zero budget request because the different costs are recuperated through the charges that go out to the landfill, to the airport,
And fuel
and to
goes-
the other departments.
And the fuel cost gets divvied up among all the,
Likewise, yes.
that's not just the airport.
I don't want to blame
It's-
Brian for all of this.
No,
Airport
it's
work.
just service.
Okay.
We're just servicing the county.
Okay.
This year was just an expensive service year.
Got it.
You know, a lot going on this year.
It was.
So when we put in the new tanks at Public Works to increase our capacity, do we do a larger pre-buy usually?
And a little bit of this could be attributed to that, to filling those tanks.
Oh, okay.
So if we see a reduction next year, we know that, but we also had a lot of fuel use this year.
Yeah. But do we do a pre-buy, a fixed price?
The more we bought, the cheaper we got.
It's a preset price based on the rack price. So does that answer your question?
Volume discount.
It's not a discount for purchasing X amount of fuel.
There is a
At one
volume
time?
discount.
A volume discount.
That's right, but it's based on the time we purchase it.
Oh, okay.
So we don't pre-buy, we don't preset the price.
Oh, okay, so you don't really watch the market, so when oil dropped substantially a year or two ago, we weren't able to take advantage of that, and,
Not tremendously,
Yeah.
not tremendously.
okay,
We did some, I remember, but not a lot.
yeah.
Well, it's an incentive to go to electric with whatever we
Exactly.
can. What, $2 to fill a tank in a car with electric, the equivalent of a tank of gas is about $2 is what Holy Cross just told us.
I
Yeah,
wonder how long you'd have to plug in a bristle sweeper truck at the
It'd take a
airport.
long time to
I
charge
think we'd
that
have to have 5 of them so we can have them plugged in and be
You
running.
just keep a long extension line
Yeah,
going.
you run an extension cord.
I'll be
Right.
back, I'll be back.
Okay,
what do you say? He said if you drive 10,000 miles a year, it's about $28 a month.
right.
Thanks, Brian.
If
Thanks,
you can
Brian.
plug it in.
Okay, next, a request for the Conservation Trust Fund. The state passes 40% of lottery proceeds to local governments. And that 40% is divided out based on population for all of the different local governments that have enrolled in this program. And then the county in turn uses that money, we're required to use it for acquiring and maintaining parks, open space, and recreational facilities. So that money gets applied to some different open space and trails acquisitions for that purpose. When we're doing the budgeting during the year, we estimate how much we think we will bring into the Conservation Trust Fund, and then that same amount goes out of the fund. It looks like we will have a higher amount this year than what we budgeted. And so since there's an extra amount going out of the fund, we need to increase the appropriation in the Conservation Trust Fund. So that's what this request is. Again, a net zero, that the funds that are brought in then get paid out and applied to a project or an acquisition.
So our lottery winnings have gone up this year. Great.
More people buying lottery tickets.
Okay.
Okay. Next, transit sales and use tax. And as you know, the Transit Sales and Use Tax Fund is where we collect two parts of the county sales tax. There's a 1% tax, sales tax, that is for mass transit, and that is 100% pass-through to RAFTA, City of Aspen, and Town of Snowmass Village. And then there's the 0.5% mass transit tax, and 81% of that goes to RAFTA, and the remaining portion is kept to be used by the elected officials' transportation committee. So this year, our sales tax through September is up 16.3% over 2018. So we've seen some pretty large increases in sales tax this year, partially due to new legislation which requires internet vendors to remit sales tax to us. In the Transit Sales and Use Tax Fund, if we're getting more revenue in, we're also paying that same revenue back out. So we need to increase our appropriations to match the amount of sales tax that we're bringing in. This supplemental request actually overshoots or tries to overshoot what we think we'll have by the end of the year. We won't know our December sales tax until about halfway into February. And so we need to have enough in the appropriation that if the rest of the year comes in even stronger than it has been, we're still covered and we don't overspend the fund. So that's what this request does.
So what happens to those dollars if we don't need it? Do they go back to the general fund, or we just?
If we've budgeted more than we're actually receiving, we just simply pay out what we've received. We pay out on the basis of what we're actually receiving in sales
So you're taking more of a conservative view at this point with this request?
With this request, actually, just the opposite. I'm overshooting, expecting more than we actually think we'll get,
I see. Okay,
so that the fund won't be overspent on a fund level. It's against state statute for us to overspend our appropriations, so we want to make sure we're covered.
Yeah, because typically the largest sales taxes of the year comes in the last 2 weeks of December, right?
Yeah, it's often about 13% of the whole year's sales tax.
That much.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Especially the way with the holiday falls this year too, it should be good.
Okay, then the next request is general improvement districts, which are Redstone Ranch Acres and Twining Flats. These improvement districts were formed to improve roads and provide maintenance in these subdivisions. And the budgets for these GIDs are very small. The main cost in their budgets is for snow plowing. In 2019, if you remember back last winter, we had some pretty heavy snowfall up through the spring, and their snow plowing costs were greater than budget. So this request just simply adds in more budget to make sure that they're covered even for the remainder of the year through December for their snow plowing costs.
Okay.
Is this one of the ideas we're looking at for Phillips?
Special
Perhaps.
Improvement District?
Could be.
Could be.
Yeah, it could be a, I don't know if it would be a general improvement district, or it would be,
Special improvement.
special,
Yeah.
or a metro district.
Metro district, right?
Yeah.
That would be if it's subdivided and owned by the people.
Because there's differences between those, right?
There are.
Yeah.
Aspen Village is a
Metro district.
metro district.
What did we do with Woody Creek several years ago?
Metro district.
A metro district, yeah. Okay, thanks.
After a long, hard-fought battle.
Yes. It's still going on.
I know.
Okay, next request is ambulance service. The county's ambulance fund contracts with Aspen Valley Hospital for ambulance services. And what happens is that the ambulance department at the hospital collects revenues from patients. They have their costs, and then the net difference, the net deficit is covered by the ambulance district fund. And the cost of that for 2019 is higher than budgeted. I did include some information that shows, our 2019 budget, 2019 projected, and 2018 actual. And just wanted to show down at the bottom, the 2018 actual, the net cost of the ambulance service was about $435,000. However, then our 2019 budget was only $390,000, so less than the 2018 actual. The 2019 projected cost is just about 1.5% higher than 2018 actuals at $441,000. So compared to 2018, 2019 is just a small increase. However, the budget was a bit too low for 2019. So this request is for $50,611 to match the 2019 projection for their costs. Any questions?
We had almost $37,000 attributed to mostly to salary costs, increase in salary?
Yes, compared to budget.
That was probably due to more needs to have more transports. They were busy this year, I think, on the ground.
Yeah.
They had to have extra crews come in.
Yeah, I also wondered,
It's a lot, though.
Connie, is that where some of the fees came out for doing the project from administrative side
No,
of it too?
not within
Okay,
this.
all right. I was just wondering if that was part of it. Would have
Yeah.
been like my time associated with
Oh,
doing
no,
that.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That was project related, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a lot.
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah, I do. Phyllis was mentioning.
Come on up.
Hi, Phyllis Mattice, Deputy County Manager. They added a second ambulance during part of the year. I believe it was the summer during the daytime because they just had too many. They were operating on one and they added that second crew for that period. And I'm going to guess that's a large part of that.
They were doing a lot of transports, and they needed 2 crews on their transports.
The transports are, and that could be salaries too. We've been talking about transports. They did do a lot of transports. They were increased this year, and we've been talking about should we manage them differently. But that's for 2020.
Could we find out, though, I have some concern over some of this ground transport. I think there's some issues that we might want to be talking about. So could we find out what the increased transport purposes were? Why did they have to? I know they had one they had to send because of weather was a big one because we've had so much wind. So they couldn't fly them. They had to drive them to Denver. And that's why we had 2 crews a lot of the time. But I'd like to see, though, too, if we can get some more specific information.
When we met with them recently on budget, they had mentioned why there was the additional transports, the ground transports.
Yeah.
And some of it's that they can't fly out of Aspen, but they're going to Rifle. So they have a longer transport,
Right.
or
Some of them, they're actually driving all the way to
they're going all
Denver.
the way to Denver.
And I'd like to see if there's anything with the purpose. Is it specific? They would have that information. I'd like to find out if it was for pediatrics to children or to University Hospital for cardiac. Because I think that would be of interest, at least of interest to me, if it's not a big deal to get that information.
We can ask.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, next request is for housing.
Don't go anywhere, Phyllis.
I figured the timing was right. This request is $100,000 for the Phillips, and it's really a transfer for Basalt Vista for the solar. And it's going to be a transfer from Phillips where we didn't spend what was budgeted. when we were making the decision on solar, there was $200,000 that was needed in order to buy the solar panels for all the 27 units. Core contributed $100,000, and we were going to match. We thought we would have savings of $100,000 or close from our operations. We're closing in on our contract with Habitat, and I'll say we are not. I think we have $600 left in that budget line, so we're asking for the $100,000 now for that solar. Basalt Vista construction costs are just higher than we originally thought when we started this 3 years ago. That nice round number we have of $3,008,679, that was a John Peacock calculation on the number of bedrooms that we were getting. And we're still, we're actually ahead on bedrooms because the school district hasn't been able to fill the 3 and the 4 bedrooms. So we've been making some swaps on bedrooms, and we are filling through APSHA more 3 and 4 bedrooms. So we'll see how we end up in the third phase. Right now, the first phase is being filled. They're starting to construct the second phase, and we're looking at should we make some adjustments in the third phase. So.
Yeah. Did town of Basalt utilize any of those units at this point?
No.
No. They haven't even applied.
I don't know if they've applied. They haven't. No one's won the lottery for them.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know that, you know, the solar was critical, but I hate having to take money out of Phillips because we're already looking at ways to find money for Phillips. So I think we need to be careful in when we think, oh, we're going to have a cost savings, so that $100,000, and then we can back it up by taking it from somewhere else. I think we need to be careful in doing that because I hate to take from another fund that's already struggling for dollars.
We did fully budget for Phillips for next year, so this was money that was not spent for this year.
Well, but we still need money
but
for
Phillips might need more money. You are absolutely right on that one.
Yeah, but I understand it, but we needed to do the solar, so it's kind of a, you know, we just need to, I think, be careful in the future.
And soon we'll be done with the infrastructure. I think the last report I heard from Basalt Vista, the only project left to put up is streetlights. So that's our $3 million was supporting all of the infrastructure that went in. So that's.
I thought we
pretty
were only
much done.
doing vertical. Now we're doing horizontal.
I guess it is.
Yeah,
kind of.
It's horizontal. Yeah. I mean, it's not horizontal unless they got really interesting streetlights.
I don't know, but I'm sure they're
project. So you can't deny that.
Okay. Next, we have having issues with this. We have some overhead cost adjustments. So every year we prepare a cost allocation plan, and what this plan does is it identifies all of the indirect services that are paid out of the general fund. That would be BITS, facilities, finance, HR, attorney, the manager's office, treasurer, and all of these costs paid out of the general fund. We calculate how much needs to be charged out to other funds that also use those services. We do use a third party that reviews the data and makes sure that it is in compliance with federal guidelines, and they prepare our final plan. And so in this way, the general fund can recuperate the costs used to support enterprise or special revenue funds. And when we're doing the budget for these overhead costs, we try to include in the budgeting any capital projects that we know of, or any issues that might require additional internal services when we're doing the budgeting, but we don't always capture everything that might happen through the year. The cost allocation plan is based on prior year actuals, so what we're charging in 2019 is based on 2018 actual costs. So this supplemental request simply is adjusting the budgets for overhead in the areas where it was more than budgeted. Some reasons for this, For example, the Healthy Community Fund in 2018, there was an election, so treasurer and finance and some other staff spent more time ahead of time preparing the ballot measure and what was necessary for that. In the ambulance overhead, with the large construction project going on, there was more time both on a finance and procurement level, also Rich's time dedicated to that project, and others in the county. So it just reflects what actually happened in 2018 for those overhead costs. And this money then is reimbursed back to the general fund.
So, but the community health fund, that ballot question, that was 2018.
Right.
We're just catching up with it now in 2019.
So 2018 actual costs are done in a cost allocation plan, which is not prepared until 2019, until we have full 2018 costs, and then that's charged in 2019.
So, but then we did the ambulance district, which was just in 2019, and we're already doing it now. So why aren't we doing that in 2020?
So this is not 2020. This is
Right, but you just said because of the Healthy Community Fund, it was for what happened in 2018.
Right.
We're just catching up with it now, but the ambulance barn was built in 2019.
But it was started in 2018.
Yeah, we
Okay,
started,
that's why.
yeah.
Okay, but now does the Healthy Community Fund overhead, does that come out
Of the Healthy Community
Okay,
Fund.
so these are all then attributed back into the individual
Yes.
funds?
Yes.
Okay. I just don't ever remember something that significant in the past for these overhead costs of $300 and something thousand. Seems like a lot more than normal for me. I mean, I don't remember supplemental budget requests for all these overhead over costs in the past.
We did last year. I'm not sure if we've done it other years
Yeah,
in the past.
it just seems like a significant amount for, you know, we just have to keep an eye on, you know, it sounds good when we pass a budget and then we have all these supplementals during the year, then, you know, our budget is kind of, I know, it's tough. It would be nice if we could stick to things and know what we're budgeting, and I know that there are changes that happen during the year, but
Yeah.
I think it's misleading in some cases.
Well, part of the problem, in the past, we've had this come to us in bits and pieces, so it hasn't looked that ominous, but we've asked.
But I'm the one who asked for it to be consolidated. So.
Yeah, we've asked to be consolidated, so we're seeing a bigger chunk at once versus being spread over the course of a year, so it looks.
Well, that's why we asked for it to come in big, not in little pieces,
Right,
because we wanted
so-
to see the overall impact. But it's still, regardless of that, it's still a lot of changes,
Yeah,
and I
no,
know
I-
that there's things, but it's just hard to pass a budget and then tell the public we're spending this much money, and then, oh, by the way, we're
Yeah,
adding.
no, I agree with that.
Yeah,
but
it's just, but I know that's how life happens sometimes. It's just difficult when we have to address it, when our constituents say, you passed a budget of X, and then at the end of the year, budget was really.
Well,
Yeah, and one of
you know, after 3 months of budget meetings, I didn't see one person from the public here, so.
No, of course.
Huh?
Of course, they were all watching us on TV, right, for the privacy of their own
So,
home.
You
I
know,
always
and
find
it-
that interesting.
It does reflect kind of proper accounting. I mean, it's just
Yeah, it's
those
what
actual
happens. It's
charges.
just-
So
it's difficult.
let's say like in the ambulance one, that was my time that was not charged to general fund. So
Right.
it's not a full $325,000 increase to the overall budget.
Right,
It offsets.
but it's still coming out of taxpayer dollars.
Oh, yeah,
So,
it's.
and we
it's
have, that's our, you know, one of our primary fiduciary
Absolutely.
responsibilities is
Oh,
how
yeah.
we spend that money. So I think we just need to try and be as transparent as possible with the public, saying, these are things that happen during the year, and we are really working towards trying to keep a budget on the budget, but
Yeah.
that doesn't always happen the way life goes on in the duration of a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then we've got two more. And the next request is related to agency funds. And as you know, with our new ERP, with moving to Munis, it was not just a change in the software. We also created a new chart of accounts and separated out some funds that used to be accounted for in the general fund. So the ERP implementation was a good opportunity to do some cleanup of the way we were handling certain funds. Agency funds are used to account for assets that the county holds as an agent for a private organization or another government. But it's not our money. So since it's not our money, we're just collecting it for someone else, paying it out on their behalf. They're non-budgetary funds. We don't need a budget. We don't need appropriations for agency funds. There are a number of items that were in the general fund, but we're now moving to an agency fund. So we need to remove the budget for them from the general fund and then transfer the fund balance related to them to the agency fund. So that's what this request does. Included there is jail commissary, and that would be both what inmates pay into a commissary account and then what they're purchasing with those funds. MTAC, Emergency Medical Trauma Advisory Council, Public Safety Council, Firearms and Range Program, Aspen and Basalt Fire Marshal fees that pass through community development, and also City of Aspen housing referral fees which pass through community development. So again, this is not a change in anything that we're doing. It's simply accounting for it in a different way and making the accounting adjustments. Questions?
Nope, looks pretty clear.
Okay, then the next one I handed out, and you should have it there in front of you, Munis conversion, transfers, and recoding. You have the supplemental request write-up, but then I also handed out the second page has a whole list. So, going from our old chart of accounts where we had about
Oh, I see what you did.
13,000 different line items in the chart of accounts to the new one with about 6,500. And Anne and Liz put in a tremendous amount of time and work developing the new chart of accounts and then mapping the old to the new. In the conversion, a one-to-one crosswalk was set up between the old chart of accounts and the new. And then budget and actuals from 2019, from January all the way through June 21st, were moved over in this transition. But as we're moving to a new chart of accounts, there are also changes that we need to account for, that we're doing things a little differently in the new chart of accounts, or things that simply need to go into a different area than where it was mapped to. So this is a cleanup of all of those conversion changes. This does not increase the county appropriations at all. It does not increase revenues. It's a net zero budget request. You see the total amount on the resolution will be increased by about $4.8 million of revenue and expenditures just because of the moving back and forth of different pieces. But there's nothing new, no new projects. It's simply what was appropriated already but is being handled differently and moved to different areas. As shown on this, it's divided into a few different sections. There are 3 new funds that are established in 2019, Fleet, Public Safety Radio, and Park Dedication fees. So we need to move fund balance from the general fund into these funds so they have their starting fund balance. Debt is being consolidated into the debt service fund, where it used to be paid out of the ambulance, open space, or capital funds. It's now paid out of the debt service funds, and then transfers are made from open space, ambulance, and capital into the debt service fund. So all of the changes you see here are simply moving the budget pieces and moving the fund balance related to that over to account for it in the debt service fund. There's no change in the debt service itself. Smuggler Super Fund we had in the Public Health Fund and is now being separated out into its own fund. No operational change. It's still Environmental Health and Kurt Dahl that will be overseeing that fund. It's just an accounting change to account for it in its own fund. And then it leaves less confusion when you see a public health fund balance. It doesn't also include the Superfund balance. Then some recoding between funds, items that should have been capital but were in general or vice versa. And so moving some items there, and then some intra-fund recoding, simply changing the accounts of a number of things where we're paying it out of within their funds.
So we won't see this next year because everything would have been switched over.
Oh, come on, it was so much fun trying to figure it out. No.
And
from 16,000 to 6,500 or something.
Yeah, it was quite a puzzle to go through and figure some of this out. In fact, the resolution that's in your packet for tomorrow does not include this last piece, so I will be bringing an updated resolution. The net change to budget remains the same.
It's just this is in
it's
this
still
account rather than
the
that account.
$357,420. That remains the same. The overall expenditure and revenue amounts is increased significantly just because of all of these changes that are going on.
Okay. Got it. It's so clear.
Hold on to it.
And those are all of the requests. Again, we'll be here for first reading tomorrow.
Okay. We will
Okay.
see you here.
We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Connie.
Thanks for that.
Connie, as always. And Ann. I saw you got some pictures in the calendar this year. This one? Is that Gold Hill? Was it Gold? Which one did you have?
The drool.
The Drool. I didn't know they called that the Drool. Redstone. Because it's kind of what it looks like.
Yep, that's what they call it, that. All right, thank you. Okay, so we are skipping over future agenda calendars. Actually, we have reviewed future agenda calendars. Do you have anything you want to
We
bring
do.
up?
Let me hand these out. George, you look like you're at a press conference.
I know, for some reason.
Yeah,
You want mine? You can have mine
double
too.
mic'd them.
Just don't talk about NATO, which is all I could get on the news this morning. Oh, no. Are we going to talk about this? I don't have my revised one upstairs, but it's upstairs.
Well, we're hoping this may be the final revised here. I think there are some changes, as you note on this, is that the work sessions in November and December have been removed. But I think, from my understanding, this meets with
Election
kind of the
day.
dates that you all had discussed earlier.
We got election day off on here because that's a big election.
Does it look pretty close to, I know you guys have had a lot of discussions about dates, and we got into, again, this year, is always challenging, but I think
I have my
based on what we
revised
had
one
last year.
upstairs. I'll look at it
Okay,
again to
yeah.
make sure, because I made circles, and George told
Right.
me not to talk about it then, but I did anyway.
Yeah,
take-
if you
I'll
would,
take a look
please,
at it
Patty,
upstairs.
we can certainly
I'll take a look at it upstairs.
take a look at that, okay. We also need to talk about the board retreat, and there's a couple of dates that have been thrown out for you all to
Asking
think
us
about.
about January?
Well, it's
January,
gonna be difficult because we're missing 2 commissioners here.
yeah, you're right. You want me to just hold off on that?
Yeah.
And we'll just, okay, all right.
And I need to
Do you
enter
wanna,
all
you
the
wanna look
meetings
at your
into
calendars
January. I don't have,
with
I
these two,
don't
and
have
we'll
my
just
January.
email them?
Yeah, I don't have my January calendar. I just got it.
Oh,
so
okay, okay, all
I
right.
need to enter in there all my
We'll just
conflicts.
have Charlotte send out an email and
Okay.
do it that way to start. out.
Tomorrow we'll have at least 4, so
Okay,
we
okay.
could always
Maybe we can do something
get
there.
a little closer
Okay, all right.
I won't have my
Um,
calendar. I'll work on it.
tonight. That's just for the retreat.
This is just a
You're looking
retreat.
at January, February, right?
We were, 2 dates, just if I can just throw them out real quick.
Yeah.
January 28th and 29th, or February 11th and 12th. Those are kind of the two that,
January 28th.
or other dates in February, yeah.
What?
January 28th and 29th.
January 28th is a ACRA meeting
Okay,
in the morning,
yeah.
and the 29th.
But you could start after ACRA.
Yeah, or I
we can
can-
adjust
Yeah, I
starting
can see
times.
what
or
Acra's
Or you
whatever.
go,
planning
or
the
you go
first-
29:30, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Tuesday
No.
Yeah.
work session. Because February 11th, 12th, you've got a work session and a regular meeting, so that probably wouldn't work.
Did it say, did you say
said
February 11th and 12th?
didn't you?
Yeah, it
Rich?
does. Yeah, that's
So that wouldn't work.
that's not good.
That's good. We already have meetings that day, so we should be free to have our
Let's say,
retreat.
yeah, we just cancel the meetings and have the retreat. So okay, we'll.
I'll check with Acra.
Okay.
Just, I didn't see my Acra calendar yet either, so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if the board lands on that, I can miss the
No,
Acra
but we
meeting.
normally don't utilize a work session
No.
day. We use
No.
a date that we're not meeting, so.
Yeah, we
so
do.
usually the end of the month.
Yep.
Thursday, Friday seems to usually work best, so.
Yes.
we'll have to
Okay.
revisit
We'll
that.
refocus this and come back to you.
Okay.
Any of you
The 30th,
planning?
31st would probably be,
What's that? 31st.
well, yeah,
As an
those last three,
opportunity.
the 29th, 30th, and 31st of
Right.
January.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Let's see.
Because the COG meeting will be the fourth Thursday, so that'll work.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Any of you planning on the Winter Skull Lunch at all? It's
When is it?
the 19th of January. It's a Thursday, and it goes from 12 to 2 at the St. Regis.
Wait a minute, 19th of January, what am I
That's a
looking
Sunday.
That's a
9th.
Sunday.
9th.
at? 9th. Oh,
9th of
9th,
January.
okay,
I will
there you go.
probably be going. I'll tell
probably
Charlotte to
go.
get a ticket. We have to get tickets.
Yeah, we need to let Charlotte know if you're going to go so we can get
I'll
tickets.
plan
in
on it,
advance.
I go to
Okay.
that every year.
So you got. No?
That's where they
Okay.
crown the king and queen.
So Greg and Patty, and then
I'll
we'll
check to see what my,
we'll check with the other two as well. And then there's a CDOT Transportation Forum this Thursday. It says this Thursday is Thursday, March 12th, from 12 to 3. I know that's a ways out. It's been added to your future calendars, okay?
that's
Where
the
is that?
thing that's being held in Glenwood or Rifle or,
Yeah, it doesn't say here. It's probably in
Glenwood's-
your future calendars.
we got it from Dave. He
Okay.
sent it to us about, it's a Rifle Glenwood,
Who knows?
Garfield County.
Is it?
We
Oh,
can-
that's that biggie. That,
We'll wait and see.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
I could probably go.
Okay, well, it's, you'll
a
see it in
reason
your
to.
future calendar list there now, it's been added. And then, also wanted to let you know, that this Thursday, the 5th, from 4 to 7, from the airport side of things, the visioning committees, or the working groups are reporting out to the visioning committees. So it'll be set up for the groups to give about a 20-minute presentation on their report findings. There's going to be some time set aside for minority reports, and then that information will be taken to the visioning committee, and then they're going to start really doing the work to eventually get to a recommendation that's going to
Will
come
it
to
be
you.
televised, saved?
Yes, yeah, it'll all be
Yeah, 'cause
televised.
it's a little late notice and I have
Yeah,
plans on
just-
Thursday. I'm going to the youth water thing and.
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that
be in
it's a
Denver.
reporting out portion of it. So
When are you
it's
going?
it's
Are you
there.
going
I'm gonna go tomorrow night or Thursday
after our
morning.
meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll probably go in the next morning, actually. Don't like driving at night.
That's all I have.
Okay, great. That's it then.
And I had one thing, but I
Patty?
resolved it, so I don't have to bring it up.
You got it, you're covered. George, nothing? Okay. Then any open discussion?
Yes, let me switch gears here.
Did you see my grandson?
That's a good picture. Oh, great, I love it.
Yeah, great
So,
picture. That's Mac.
I was criticized for doing that with my kids.
So all of these can
Slimy
probably
bear butt on there.
can probably wait until you get your full board here, but a couple of things of note is discretionary fund balance.
Oh,
is
yeah.
at $9,750. So you might start thinking about some ideas.
Yeah, if you would just bring what we've done last year or even the last 2 years,
Last couple years.
Okay. All
that'd
right.
be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember I,
And then ask, we usually ask Nan or to give us sort of any recommendation if she sees any immediate need.
Okay. Okay, we will do that for
and
you.
did everybody sign up for the county holiday party?
County holiday party. Oh.
Yeah, it's on the PCIN.
It came out in the county
It's-
newsletter for the month of December. I have flyers taped to my glass on my desk. You
It's a
guys.
big celebration, the Viceroy. A lot of people. We've
Oh,
had
right,
over.
yeah, I've been to that.
But you guys are too late. You can't come now. Everybody had to sign up after they read the newsletter. That's
Dang.
why Pat sends out the newsletter.
I'm guessing nobody's going to stop you at the door.
I am, because I signed up. No, you guys, it's at the Viceroy
I'll
on the.
carve the roast beef.
It's on the 13th.
I believe what date is that?
It's week.
Well, I can look it up
That's
here.
coming
I got it right
fast.
here. I got it
I'm
right
Oh, you've
here
got
on
it?
my
ready
paper
for
Perfect.
calendar.
Yeah.
It's on the 14th.
14th, yeah.
5:30 to 6. 5 to 6:30 are cocktails. 5:30 to 6:30 is Santa. Dinner is 6:30 to 8 something, and you can stay and dance till 9:30.
There you go.
Thank you for telling us that. This is on the 14th?
It's on Saturday the 14th at the Viceroy.
A couple other things to think about. A letter of
The
support
RSVP.
for Holy Cross becoming a broadband provider. Kara, I believe, had sent out a little bit of information on that. Anyways, there's Holy Cross Energy's considering its role with broadband based on legislative changes last year. It's similar to like the co-ops, the DMEA did it, I believe, down in Delta, where they utilize their system to help provide broadband. So,
They use the power lines to run.
yeah. Their board is going to be discussing options at their January 15th meeting, and then they'll says they need to update their own assets and effectively meet their 70-30 plan as a part of their necessary improvements. The board will also consider moving into broadband and recognizing its regional issue that they are aptly positioned to solve. So that is probably going to be kind of coming your way. So
Okay.
we can come back with a draft letter and, for consideration, okay?
Great.
And then also, are you with Northwest Cog still? Are you sitting on that? That may come up at their December 5th meeting.
As far as.
This
Holy Cross will
This
bring
Holy
that
Cross.
forward.
Oh,
Okay. So just want to
yeah.
give you a heads up.
I'm not going to the December 5th meeting because I'm going to the Water Summit, and the December 5th meeting is primarily to move our budget forward, but we had a very extensive budget discussion at our last meeting, so,
Okay.
yeah, it's a little short meeting over in Silverthorne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like this may be coming up there, the Holy
Yeah,
Cross.
I'll follow up with John
Okay.
Stabney. Thank you
All
for the heads up.
You're welcome. That's that. Oh, no, that's all I've got.
And what happened?
Great.
What happened with Jody? She was out sick?
Migraine.
She's
yeah.
out,
Yeah.
yeah, she's sick today.
Yeah.
Right.
So that makes us
That's it for
done?
me. I was gonna say, just open discussion, the birthday party. George was there yesterday for Klaus.
I didn't know about it because
Oh,
I
it
just had
was a-
gotten back into town, and I,
What was great about it was like an old timers party, of course. There were people from going back 50 years or more.
100 years.
Yeah, 100 in his case. And I was just, thinking, you reflect on Klaus's abilities as a manager and as a leader in his own, company. He's still so deeply involved at 100. George may have said he could be the oldest active CEO in the world, if not the country right now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Especially the oldest active CEO who still skis.
Who still skis, who's loved by his employees, just an amazing guy. I wish we could,
I've been there.
get that essence of Klaus and spread it around. And want to make sure everybody who works for the county get to know him. Would be great, to know who he is and what he's done there, because it's remarkable.
I love the fact that he left his party to go home and take a nap.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, he was a busy guy.
That had to be really overwhelming for him because
Yeah.
to meet and greet all those people.
It was probably 400 or 500 people over there.
Yeah,
He didn't seem overwhelmed. He had a smile.
He
the
was
entire
smiling
time.
the whole time,
He
yeah.
had women all around him. He was
a happy
happy.
guy.
He's in his element. Yeah, that's true. But to have so many employees from
Was Nobby
decades
there?
ago come back,
Was Nobby?
40-year employees, just such
It's a great tribute. Yeah.
really was a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you. I guess we're done, huh?
Done.
Thanks, Grassroots. We
Thank you,
are
Grassroots.
over and out.
It's
Thanks,
amazing
Amy.
how efficient you can be with 3. So tomorrow we're at noon, right?